Councillor Pat Fitzgerald. Councillor Pat Fitzgerald. Councillor Jim Griffin.
Unsure.
Councillor John Hearn.
Unsure.
Councillor Joe Kelly.
Unsure.
Councillor Christina Kiley.
Unsure.
Councillor Eddie Mulligan.
Unsure.
Councillor Jason Murphy.
Unsure.
Councillor Lolo Sullivan.
Unsure.
Councillor Jody Power.
Unsure.
Councillor Edmund Quinlan.
Unsure.
Councillor Frank Quinlan.
Present.
Councillor Mary Roach.
Here.
Councillor Seamus Ryan.
Present.
Councillor Adam Wise. Can I confirm there, Councillor Pat Fitzgerald? No. Okay. Okay, Mayor.
Thank you. We have the budget in front of us, the Metropolitan District budget. And I'll go straight over to CEO Michael. Maybe Michael, you can lead us into this, please. Okay.
Mary's just having a bit of trouble joining, actually.
Okay.
Just bear with us for a minute. Okay, Michael has joined the meeting now.
Okay, CEO, you're very welcome to the meeting. We're going straight into the Metropolitan District budget meeting. So maybe you might take us into that, please, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, and my apologies, Mayor. I was on a conference, I suppose, promoting Waterford to a tourism conference, and it just ran a little bit over. Look, you'll be aware, Mayor, historically these meetings have to be held before the primary budget meeting, and historically we have never been that happy with that process, and I think that's true across the country. There's somewhat limited choice. I suppose it's an opportunity for you as councillors to feed in the first instance in the budgetary process, because we will be engaging over the next month, 6 weeks, I suppose month really only at this stage, with you as a council. We obviously are doing a significant amount of work looking at the coming year's budget. There's no point in saying that it'll be easy, is the way I describe it. Budgets probably never are, but I think it is going to be difficult again in the coming year. We've been very fortunate across all local authorities that over the last couple of years, government have supported us significantly, primarily through a rate waiver scheme whereby they were also supporting businesses, but they actually removed really significant risk on the financial side of things in the COVID environment from us. And in a sense, 2019 and or 2020 rather, and 2021, we've had that bit of comfort, is the way I describe it, and bit of certainty. As we're entering what we all hope to be a sort of post-COVID environment, or changed maybe from pandemic to endemic environment, obviously would expect to be back to a more normal scenario next year, with most businesses open, hopefully all businesses open, in fact. And we are going to be probably without those government supports, and have to manage, in a sense, on our own 2 feet. The reality is that that's in a broader environment that isn't going to be great, because everybody knows there are significant cost pressures, generally speaking, in the environment. on the construction side of things, on the energy side of things, and otherwise. And we're obviously going to have to provide for those in budgetary terms, but we're doing so off a base that is not great, really, in the sense of the budget being relatively fixed. In truth, with the last sort of 10 years or more, our budgets are relatively fixed in that we have similar local government fund allocations right across the country. This isn't peculiar to Waterford for the last 8 or 10 years. In that period, I would say since as long ago as 2010, I don't believe the only small increases we've had in that intervening period are 2% on rates and a small increase in the local property tax, which we've tried to obviously concentrate on footpath renewal program and otherwise. So the scope in many respects on the budgetary side of things is difficult. We've never been under more pressure in many respects in terms of workload, which is a good thing, because on the capital side of things, there is a lot of work there. I don't think it needs explaining to anybody that on the housing side of things, there's phenomenal pressure, and we're seeking to deliver an awful lot more houses. Generally speaking, there's more schemes in terms of affordable housing and otherwise coming at us, and there are really significant pressures there as a whole. Our planning activity is increased relatively dramatically, whether that's sort of a COVID bubble or otherwise. We're sort of waiting to see at the moment, but and we have in probably the roads and environment areas very significant capital allocations that we're seeking to get projects delivered in an environment where capacity in the construction sector is obviously challenged at the moment. So in the broad round of things, we're as busy as we ever were, probably going back to sort of 2008 or 2009 levels of activity, and that applies significant pressure on a workforce that is probably still 15 or 20% down of peaks that would have existed in the noughties in terms of numbers of staff and otherwise. So the overall environment is challenging. It's also positive though in a whole host of respects, because there is an awful lot of activity. And I think that activity is for the betterment of Waterford as a whole. Bernard would have shared with you their, I suppose, an assessment of, and we use the language of discretionary expenditure. A lot of our expenditure is fixed, if you know what I mean, in terms of we have to pay the wages every week. There are an awful lot of our budget, big part of our budget, which I would call money in, money out, where we get grants from government. We have to discharge those by way of payments, and we recoup those grants once we have the money expended, and only once we have the money expended. And there's always conditions and requirements to be met in terms of the spending of those funds. So whether it's roads, housing, or other areas, there are really significant government grants within our budget, and we don't have a say, in a sense, in terms of discretion over those. And when it all boils down, there's very limited discretionary expenditure, and to be very open to anybody to argue that in truth there's very little of that discretionary. So you have 8 or 10 headings there where you can choose to or not to choose to spend or not to spend that money in those particular areas. But equally, I think most people would agree, I think most of yourselves as elected members, that look, all those things are desirable to do and you want to do them. So the degree of discretion that's actually available is quite limited. And that's why at every budget meeting, certainly since I've been in either city or city and county council, there has in truth at the end of any budget process, it all comes down to 1 or 2 areas where expenditure can be varied a little bit. But in truth, the discretion is quite limited. The other function of this meeting, Mayor, is very simply that if you have at your discretion the choice of varying local charges, and in this instance, parking is the only one of consequence, if you know what I mean, that you could choose to vary. You can see there that in terms of Waterford City, the income is over €1 million on parking itself. If you choose to vary that up or down, then obviously the procedure here is that it has to be taken out of the Metropolitan District budget in some area, or alternatively additional money put in if it's additional income is generated. Our own view there generally is that there's limited degree to vary and sustain a constant policy in terms of parking and active travel and all the other things. But it is entirely within your gift as a Metropolitan District to do so if you so choose. So other than that, Mayor, I don't have an awful lot to add. It's a matter for yourselves in terms of expressing your priorities or otherwise in the context of budget. And I'll leave it to you.
Thank you very much, CEO. 4 members here have indicated to speak. So Councillor Joe Kelly, Councillor Lolo Sullivan, Councillor Mary Roach, and then Councillor Davy Daniels. So Councillor Joe Kelly, please.
Good of era. I haven't a lot of in detail to say about stuff other than what Michael has referred to. We all know, because we've been in this rodeo a few times now, that there's practically nothing we can do of any substance to a district budget in particular. And even when it comes to the overall city and county one, we can vary rates up a bit, and we've already put up property tax and so on. And even in terms of parking, which Michael referred to, I don't think it's appropriate for us to say drop parking charges or reduce them. We're already in a tight situation. Nor do I think that the people will really sustain an increase in parking charges either, because we are trying to get back from the pandemic. Shops need the business and people need to park at reasonable rates, which I actually fully believe we have in Waterford, very reasonable rates. So I don't think we can really, in my view anyway, tinker around with that. Having the meeting, as Michael said, almost in advance of the main meeting, it's kind of cart before horse type of thing. But again, it's dictated to us by the way government is and the way government policy is. So, Mayor, all I'd say is that the budget as presented, I think, is probably as good as it can be. Now, I'm not, other councillors can disagree and say what they need to say, but I'd be happy to propose that the budget as presented, given the views that Michael have expressed, and indeed the few views that I've just put in there. We're extremely limited as councillors within a district in what we can do. The changes either way, up or down, would be minimal. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor, and I know that you have other speakers.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Lolo Sullivan, and then Councillor Mary Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick one. The parking fee for Tramore, can you tell me what was the set fee? As in there was a set charge and 500 supposedly tickets were allocated. So I'd like to know what that is. I want to know, is the fee, is the income up from last year, and by how much, and how much of that was brought in on fines? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll take one more and then we'll go back for answers. Councillor Mary Roach.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor, I was listening very carefully to the manager, and I appreciate what he's saying, that this is kind of a backwards process. And in fairness, this kind of process shouldn't happen until after the main budget, but that's not something we have much control over. Mayor, I have to say I object strongly to the allocation for the general maintenance of roadworks. Like at the way the budget is presented, with 57% of the population in the metropolitan area and 58% of or 57% of the budget for 58% of the population, or the other way around. Yeah, that's the right way. Like the roads budget, we have much less. If we were to get 57% of the roads budget, we would be getting over 1.2 million. And at the very least, Mayor, I think we should be getting the parking raised in Waterford and Tramore should be coming to Waterford and Tramore for roadworks. Our roads in the city, Mayor, in particular, get a huge amount of usage, not just with people who live at this end of the county, but also, in fact, you know, with tourism, with the amount of people coming through, the amount of people come through the city. There's huge tracts of the city where you can't, the whole road markings even are completely gone on large parts of the quay, driving onto the bridge, making it extremely dangerous, particularly now for the dark evenings where you can't see yellow boxes, you can't see white lines driving onto the bridge, people are straying. I really object. I want to know who makes the decision on the on this allocation. Like, who says roads in the city and the Metro is getting 636 while the Comra and Dungarvan get those amounts, because it doesn't reflect either the population or
100%.
the need in the areas. And I must say, I completely, things like you know, the economic development and the arts administration, there can be allocated anywhere, Mayor. Like, tourism doesn't get spent only on the city. We market everything, so they're only allocations and they mean nothing effectively. But the roads budget is very important, and I think at the very least we should be getting the money that is raised on parking in the city should be used in the city and in the metropolitan area for road improvements, and should not be going out. It's not as if we have no needs. If everything was in the metropolitan area was hunky-dory, I'd be saying fine, spread the money around, but it isn't, Mayor, and the city and the metropolitan area in Tramore have needs that are not being met, and we are not getting our fair share under that allocation.
Thank you very much. Sorry, do you want to come back in, Michael, or whoever's taking the questions?
Fergus here. I might come in. I think
Yeah.
Michael dropped out. I think you're experiencing some connection problems there. Yes, that's okay. A couple of things there that I can pick up on, and maybe Bernard can come in and pick up some of the ones that I don't get. On the parking in Tramore, where the Councillor Sullivan was referring to, our parking income for Tramore this summer is up probably by about 10 to 15,000 euro over what it was in 2020. I haven't the final figure on it as yet because I have VAT to come out of it as well. Like, we have to pay VAT on parking in our off-street car parks, of which we have 200 more. So I don't know that figure, but overall it's up around probably by somewhere between about 10 and 15,000 euro in net terms. On the fines, the budget income for fines, traffic fines for Tramore only in the year is about 5,500 euro. On Mary Roach's comments there in relation to the roads budget, it's based on a number of factors. One, I suppose first of all I should clarify that the figure for roads that's in the sheet that Bernard passed around there is in respect of local roads only. It's not in respect of either regional roads or national primary roads. Proportionately, the city and the metro area probably has a higher proportion of regional roads than say other parts of the county. So the spend there is probably skewed similarly in that respect. Like, in terms of how we allocate the budget, it's a calculation really between the length of local roads that we have in the city, the metropolitan area, versus what we have in the Cumbria and the Dungarvan and Smore districts, which would have a very, very significantly higher number of kilometres of local roads. And equally, then we take into account things like traffic volumes and population trends and so forth. But I mean, overall, we have about 3,100 and odd kilometres of roads to maintain across the city and county, no matter how we divvy it up. And we've made this point before, and Michael Welch has made it before. Like, our level of spend at the moment is probably less than half of where it needs to be, and that cuts across everything. Like, if you go back to where, in terms of what the rate at which we should be either sealing our roads or strengthening our roads, are probably somewhere between maybe half and a third of the recommended overall life cycle maintenance that we do on our roads. Like, on some of our roads, we're hitting them maybe once every 70 to 80 years, but we should be doing them maybe once every 25 to 30 years. On things like resealing of our roads, we're doing them maybe once every 30, 35 years, as opposed to the recommended, which would be maybe between about 10 and 15 years. And that's just like, and long term, there has been some additional money has come in there over the past number of years. I suppose since 2016, 2017, the department has been giving us allocations well over and above the level of inflation for the last number of years, but we're still a long ways off what we need.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Sorry, Mayor. Just to go in on one thing is the allocation. The allocation that was the way it was split out in terms of local road maintenance that Fergus was just talking about. It was based on the 2019 service plan, which would have been agreed by the council. So it's probably fairly fair split. Yeah, so that's it.
Okay, can I just ask if you've spoken or if you've come in, if you could lower your hand, it would help with the meeting here, please, if you've already been in. Now, the next person I have is Councillor David Daniels, Councillor Eamon Quinn and Councillor Pat Fitzgerald, in that order, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of issues there. First of all, regarding the roads, Mayor, I think we're just concluding our current roads programme at the moment. And first of all, I'd have to say I feel that our roads department, they would have done an excellent job in spreading out the funding like as best they can. But I think I want to come in on this at the Metropolitan meeting today, but I'll raise it now as we're on roads. I think I'd have to agree fully with Councillor Roach. I think it's regrettable that the funding allocation for roads has been so low. I mean, there are housing estates, as we know, Mayor, you've raised this yourself, and footpaths. Now, I'd have to disagree with Fergus on this. I don't often disagree with them, but to say we do roads every 25 years, now I would be, I'm there a long number of years, and I know roads are gone up 45, 50 years. Haven't been surfaced, Mayor, and I think when you consider like €57 out of every 100 is going to the government on tax out of fuel at the moment. I mean, they're getting massive funding. That's only one tax, Mayor, and there are many more taxes. I think people are being taxed out of existence, and I think I'm very unhappy with roads, Mayor. And I said it's regrettable because some of those roads are breaking up, as we know, that they are 30, 40, 50 years, and we're unable to do them. And it's no fault of anyone in the city council or staff or whatever. The funding is not being made available, Mayor, and we should face up to that one, Mayor, for once and for all. Now, on the car park, and I know this meeting is quite often more of a non-event, and we have a limited choice what we can do. And I'd just like to get the CEO's views, and I've raised this before. We're one city, one county, and one council now, like regarding the park, and I think in Dungarvan you have a half-hour free parking there, free car parking, and I would like to know, could we consider that for the city? I think we've discussed it at previous budget meetings, but it's one that I feel we should look at. We don't have much, we can't vary the parking charges. We can't certainly increase them in any way, like in the present circumstances. But I feel I'd like to ask the CEO, would that be not agreeable that we include the half-hour free parking for parking in the city centre? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eamon Quinlan.
Thanks, Mayor. I did some research in advance of this meeting. Dungarvan, even with the 30 hours free car parking, brought in €326,000 in 2020. Combined with the figures for parking income in Tramore and Waterford City, that means that the metro area brings in 78% of the money, yet we get a spend of 28% of the money in terms of local roads. The reason why we're taking in so much more money is we've got the density, we've got more people with more cars, and I think that the algorithm that we're using to apportion money is fundamentally flawed. Fergus confirmed there that it's based on length. That means that roads in Cumbre and Dungarvan is more electoral areas that are very long but only have maybe half a dozen houses on them are getting serviced, whereas we have smaller roads in the city and Tramore that have hundreds of people living on these stretches, cars per household, and every engineer the council has tells us that roads are worn out much faster by cars driving on them in higher densities than they are from just wind and rain. I think we've been through this several times at a metro level. We don't have the power to alter the allocation of spend within the 3 districts from this meeting, but I'd like to be advised by the executive if it's possible for us to put down an instruction at a plenary level council meeting on to readjust this, because this needs to go up to at least 40% of our spend of local roads. I mean, 78% of the income for Metro and 28% of the spend. That's shocking, and we cannot allow that to continue, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pat Fitzgerald, and then I'll go back to the officials. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. and sorry for the phone there, but
It's okay.
look, I think most of the councillors has kind of covered really what I was going to say about the roads. Like, you know, the roads department is kind of in the metropolitan area doesn't really get a fair crack at the whip when it comes to funding. And really, there's quite a lot of rural roads in East Waterford as well, and tis blatantly obvious when you drive around East Waterford that the condition of the roads are not as good in the rural areas of East Waterford than they are in the Cumbre area or the Dungarvan area. But if you look at another stream of funding here is the festival and concerts funding, and that graph would go almost in the opposite direction. And like out of 0.65 million, like 573,000 goes to festivals funding in the most of it in the city, really. And really, like, we have it within our gift to kind of rearrange the amount of money that's spent on roads and festivals if we really want to do it, if the heart is there to do it. So look, I think we should really sit down and kind of really talk about this further into the future, because like if you look at the Cumbre area, they don't spend anything on festivals, and the Dungarvan area spends very little. So like, is it our own fault that there is less money for roads in the metropolitan area? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Fitzgerald. Go back to the executive. You might. There was a couple of concerns that, again, further concerns regarding roads, Fergus, and regarding parking charges and festivals. Yeah. So if somebody.
Yeah, Mayor Ferguson, I might come in just a couple of points just to clarify. I suppose Councillor Daniels mentioned the 25 years. What I've said, and just to clarify that again, is what I said is that we should be doing strengthening our roads on a 25 to 30 year cycle, but that our actual maintenance cycle on many roads at the moment is double that and more. Just to clarify that, it's not that we have, and that might be the rationale or the reason why you haven't seen maybe certain roads in some states being treated maybe in over a 40 or 50 year period. The other thing, I suppose, just again, and Councillor Quillen made the point that I had made that I had said we were basing our spend on the length of road. No, I clarified that again in my last comments, and that it was the length plus the characteristics of the road in terms of the volumes of traffic and the usage of the road. So it's not a simple algorithm, just based on road length. I'd also make the point, I suppose, just like the metropolitan area has a relatively smaller local roads network than either the Cumbre or the Dungarvan Lismore districts. And also, I suppose that like in the city as well, there's a significant spend which is not reflected in the sheet that Bernard would have passed around that goes into things like traffic management, or traffic light systems, or signs lines, of which we have a huge volume that wouldn't be reflected elsewhere. So that has to be, I suppose, factored into the equation as well. I suppose Councillor Fitzgerald made a point in relation to the roads in the metro area aren't as good as elsewhere. As somebody who's up and down these roads, both in a car and a bicycle on a weekly basis, I can tell you that the roads across the city and county are fairly evenly treated and get a fairly even treatment in terms of the quality of the road and our response to maintenance repair as such. Finally, Councillor Daniels made the point in relation to introducing a free half-hour parking in the city. I mean, that would be at the discretion of the Metropolitan District, but I would caution that there would be a very significant financial hit on that. And if we were to pursue that as a policy, we would have to find some other way of either cutting back the expenditure somewhere on our roads, which would make our road situation even worse, or find some other form of income.
Okay, thank you very much. Now the next few speakers I have is
we have it Dungarvan, don't we, Fergus?
Yes, we do. Sorry, Councillor Daniels, I'm going to have to move on. I'm just conscious. 5 o'clock is our metropolitan meeting, and I'd like to take a break for 5 minutes if we can before just before that.
Sorry, Mayor, do you mind? I asked Fergus if we are empowered to change this.
Yes, he did. Sorry.
Level. Thank you.
That's a question I might refer over to Bernard or maybe Michael in relation to the altering the allocations within the district.
Mayor, it's absolutely within the gift of the council to decide where money is spent. The reality, however, just want to be clear about this in terms of the metropolitan area. There is no distribution of money from the metropolitan area to any of the other areas. The reality is, at the point of amalgamation, government gave no funding for roads in the main urban areas, the main cities of the country. That has remained the situation since. So there are specific government grants and otherwise for the rural roads. They are not available to the same degree for the urban roads. That's a simple reality. It was the reality 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it remains the reality. After that, it's a matter for the council to allocate funding wherever they so wish. But the government grants do come with caveats on them, so that there's little enough discretion on the roads end of things on the roads funding, which is inadequate across the board.
Okay. Thank you, CEO. Now the next 4 speakers, and I'm going to take 4 because that's just the last group. Councillor Jody Power, Councillor Jim Griffin, Councillor Eddie Mulligan, and Councillor Jason Murphy. So in that order, Councillor Jody Power, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. A quick question, perhaps we're looking at in the metro area for planning income. Is there any scope at all to increase the charges for planning? Because I know the planning obviously will be much increased in the metro areas, as will in other parts of the county. Have we got scope there to increase planning fees to make the city more functional, to make the city work better? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jim Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor. I suppose like other councillors, we're always looking to see where we can trash around and change money, but I often look at the budget to see can we find anywhere to bring in income as well. And I think going back to an issue we bring up many times, and I think we overlook it as a local authority, is the camper vans. I think we're missing the opportunity to home in on the camper vans to bring in income. And we all know about the likes of the fields, Dick's Field up in Ardmore, and these fields that are €20 per night, and you'd see up to 35, 40 camper vans there. And I know when I bring it up with Fergus, it's all about the setup for the sewage and the setup for the electrics. But in the local authorities that I went to down west this year on holiday, I didn't see that. I didn't see hookups. I didn't see sewage. I just saw people getting a site for the night for 10 or 15 or 20 euro, and they move on and they look after whether their own electricity or their own sewage afterwards, thereafter. Now we have several camper van sites in Tramore in the parking zones, and we haven't got set up for those. So why do we have to keep talking about set up for the bigger ones? I mean, the metropolitan area is completely scattered with beautiful scenic areas, be it the estuary, be it Dunmore East, Passage, Tramore. We surely could be looking at putting in 15 and 20 pickup spots per night, where in the 3 months with staycations hugely on the agenda in Ireland, we could be bringing in income of upwards of €1,000 per night if we really look seriously at it. And I think we should revisit this and see can we tease it out and okay, work towards the setup for electric and for sewerage going forward. But if it's properly worded and properly signposted that it's parking for the night only, well, that's what it is. And I think we should look at it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eddie Mulligan and then Councillor Jason Murphy. And that'll be it then.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of questions there just in relation to the allocations. Comparing the allocations against 2009, I see the overall, I suppose, budget is roughly down 220,000 in relation to the allocation. And further examining it, I see, unless I'm reading it wrong, I'm comparing to the wrong year, festivals and concerts have been reduced by 470,000 compared to the last allocation. I presume this is an indication of what the annual budget is going to be like, that we're going to see cuts throughout all the different headings. Then I'm just a little bit confused then comparing different headings with the others. There's a F0501 Administration of the Arts Programme for around 351,000. But last year we had in an operation of a sports hall and stadium for a similar figure of 336,000. I'm just wondering why the change around in those two headings into the budget. Again, I just come to community grants compared to last time. They seem to be up 70,000 euro for the spent. Did we receive increased allocations from central government? And then as I bring it back up again, just up to general community and enterprise expenses, again, that's up by nearly 200,000 odd. I'm just wondering, is that because of increased allocations from central government? And again, tourism promotion, as we're, I know we had COVID-19 over the last year, but we have that allocation is down by 100,000. Surely to God, for the next 12 months, we should be promoting tourism to try and get not only people from Ireland visiting Waterford, but also international visitors visiting Waterford. And I see then the overall roads allocation is up by 200,000, which is welcomed. And I hear my colleagues discussing the allocation of it. But just to come down to parking, I see there, parking, if you look at 2019, was 1.8 million roughly. And we're down then in 2020 to 1 million, just over 1 million. Should we be not looking as the economy is recovering for 2021 figure stroke 2022 that we're going to regain that money as we come out of COVID, as the CEO was saying? Just those few questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker now is Councillor Jason Murphy, please. And then we get some answers. Thank you.
Just a very short point, again, in relation to the roads budget or roads allocation. Just in relation to the actual parameters of it, the metropolitan area, I think as a councillor, indeed like yourself, Mayor, that is from a ward that's primarily based within the city, I'd like to see a final division in relation to roads allocation in the interest of transparency. I'd like to see what's the actual allocation in relation to the city boundary, because that's where my primary concern is, whether I like it or not. And the roads in the city, as Councillor Daniels and others have said, are in rag order. So I'd like to see exactly what the city is allocated within the metropolitan allocation. I think that's very important too, because the very nature of roadworks in the city, they're more expensive, and Fergus has outlined that. So you're getting less linear metre per euro in the city than you are in the rest of Metropolitan. I think it's very important we see what the allocation is within the old city area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll go back to the executive. For that, planning fees was one, camper vans. Who'll take them for me?
I might take the second one, Mayor.
Fergus,
here, just in relation to the camper vans. I suppose the issue that we have there, while I suppose accept what Councillor Griffin is saying at one level, I mean, and with the exception of the new site that we developed down at Quansfield in Dungarvan this year, we don't generally permit overnight parking of camper vans, because the minute we do that, we're into a whole pile of other regulations, and this is where the costs, and which I've explained to Council previously, this is where we get into a whole pile of other requirements with respect to providing adequate separation distances between the units for fire safety reasons. We would have to provide the most basic sanitary facilities in terms of either both drinking water supply and a pump out facility for sewage and for grey water, and they're the 2 points really where the costs ramp up from us, and where I would have given Council, I suppose, previously indicative costs in terms of the kind of capital sum that we'd want to put into something. I mean, what we have at the moment, where camper vans may park up at night time in Tramore or Dunmore East or elsewhere out on the public road, effectively they're doing so, I suppose, illegally, so to speak, in that we have signage in place forbidding overnight camping. And so the minute you get into making an overnight camping provision, you're effectively providing temporary accommodation for somebody. And when you provide temporary accommodation, there is a requirement that goes with that to provide the basic services that go with it. I'd also caution, I suppose, that there's no golden goose in this either. And again, I said, looking at the experience in Dungarvan this year, while it was very successful and we got very good numbers, and it was full for most of the time up to the end of September. Like, at best, I say we probably realised somewhere between maybe about 15 and 16,000 euro in terms of income on it. So, like, it's not a golden goose that's going to solve all of our financial problems.
Who's going to take the question or the query regarding planning fees?
If I might, Mayor, I'll just finish. There was just one more question for myself. Yeah, and I'll hand over to the panelists. And after that, on the Council Walling had a question in relation to the parking income. I mean, our income, I suppose, we're basing budget at the moment on the experience both this year and last year. Last year, our parking income was down very substantially. That is still the same case as this year. We're running pretty much at the same run rate as we were this time last year in terms of the overall parking income. And I suppose that's what we're basing our budget on at the moment. And finally, in terms of Councillor Murphy and the city allocation, like, we do give you, and we go through roads programme for the Metropolitan District every year, which we specify exactly what we're going to spend in terms of and what roads we're going to treat and what's going to be resurfaced. So we do that on an annual basis, and we'll be doing that with you again shortly after Christmas once the budget is sorted and we have the allocations from the department and the TII and that.
Okay, thanks very much. Just in relation to the planning fees.
Yeah, Mayor.
Yeah, Mike.
We've no discretion on the planning fees. They're set at national level. They're the same for every local authority. We've no discretion. We will obviously have regard to the increased volume in the context of the budget, if you know what I mean. So we would expect increased income, but we've no discretion on the fees themselves.
Okay.
The same for development charges, CEO.
Well, the development charges are set. They don't contribute to the revenue budget. They're for capital works, and they are set in our scheme for development contributions. So they are fixed as of now, subject to review by the council, and obviously that will be done in tandem with the development plan process.
Thanks very much, Michael. Councillor Mulligan had 2 queries regarding festivals and arts funding.
Mayor, yeah, I'll just take that if you don't mind, Mayor.
Please, yeah.
Just to be clear, and I suppose, you know, as Michael said earlier on, I think it was Michael and I said this is, you know, this is a bit cart before the horse. Like, the reality is we haven't set the budget yet. We haven't even compiled the first draft of the budget yet. So this, if you look on the left hand side, what you're actually seeing is the 2020 figures, and last year you would have been looking at the 2019 figures. So there are big differences between the two. For example, I think Councillor Mulligan pointed out festivals and concerts, and yes, because of COVID, there would have been a lot less expenditure on festivals and concerts. I suppose what we're trying to demonstrate here, and it is difficult to explain this, and it's difficult to myself and team here, we went through line by line here to see what we thought was discretionary. And you know, one guy's interpretation of it discretionary might not be the same as someone else's interpretation of it. But what we tried to do was capture the items that are like, for example, local road maintenance. Like, as long as we're not saying that you couldn't spend 2.2 million, that you have that discretion, but there's an element where you can decide where you spend it. And you know, similarly with tourist promotion or community grants, festivals and concerts. So it was an attempt to look at 2020 spend and how you would split it out to identify the areas that you felt were there was an element of discretion in them. And I suppose with the to give you comfort that is reasonably fairly split in the overall scheme of things between the different districts. So yes, there are differences, and 2020 is a bit of an anomaly year. So there will be fairly big difference. As Councillor Mulligan said, in overall terms, I think it was 6.8 million in 2019, or sorry, last year in 2021. And it's 6.6 now, so it's about 200,000 difference. We did change one of the items, because when we looked at the detail of the what was it that I think Councillor said was not there last year? I think the operation of sports halls. Yeah, when we actually looked at it in a bit more detail, like, they were big chunks of money. So let's say, for example, I think it was Kingfisher, for example. We put a lump. We put money into the golf course, for example, and they weren't really discretionary at an operational level. Like, yes, you could make a decision, possibly, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to do it, but you can't do it on the basis that these type of funding streams continue on. So unless you make the strategic decision to say, I'm not doing this anymore, we decided that it wasn't really discretionary in the sense that we're trying to look at it today. It was our interpretation. We did our best to do what was fair, and that, but hopefully that explains why there's some.
Thank you. I want to thank all the members for their contributions. Just from my own point of view, I do share. I think it was Councillor Roach raised it first in relation to the roads expenditure, that despite 57.6%. In the metropolitan area, that you know, that it's just not. It seems to be just not laid out properly. So I would ask maybe, I don't know whether there can be another look taken at that. And I take the point that you know, that if we do increase expenditure in the metropolitan area, that we would have to take from other areas. But maybe if there's options can be brought back to us, you know, might be a bad thing, because I'm driving around like everyone. I'm going around the city. I'm going up and down the folly, and the road. Anyone on that road regularly will see that it badly needs resurfacing, and so on. And we could pick roads like this right throughout in each of the electoral areas within the metropolitan district. And you know, it most certainly is. And I also agree with Councillor Mulligan regarding the festivals and the arts, that, you know, we do need to look after them. Now, can I ask, have we a proposer? Anyone?
I already proposed at the start.
Sorry, you did too. Beg your pardon. Councillor Kelly proposed, seconder.
Oh, I can second it, no problem.
Thanks, Councillor Jody Power. All those in favour?
Mayor, I'm objecting.
Okay, Councillor Roach against. Anyone else?
Mayor, if I had, yeah.
Sorry, I want to get this clear. I want to get this clear, please, if we wouldn't mind. Besides Councillor Roach, is there anyone else voting against this?
Yes. Me,
Councillor Pat Fitzgerald. Councillor Eddie Mulligan, is your hand raised there? No? No. Oh. Can't hear you. Okay, so
You're on silent, Dave.
Sorry, Mayor, if I could just clarify one or two things before I decide there. Number one, there is just in relation to tourism promotion. Are we saying we're reducing tourism and promotion by €100,000 for the forthcoming year? And just in addition then to festivals and concerts, are we saying we're reducing that budget by 470,000 based upon the year gone? Or what are we actually saying?
Councillor Bernard, please, if you could take
sorry,
that.
no, sorry, this is not what we're saying. As I say, this is the cart before the horse. We haven't decided the budget yet. I mean, it's up to you to decide what the budget is in the next few weeks. This is just an indication, and it's like, it is frustrating, I'm sure, for you, and to be honest with you, for us, in the sense that you're trying to make you're trying to indicate how fairly the discretionary aspect of this is split between the districts. This is based on 2020 figures. It's not based on 2022 budget.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
Mayor, could I just, my apologies for interrupting. Mayor, you don't need a resolution other than
Okay, that's fine.
Other than that, you wish to vary the parking income one way or the other.
Okay.
Other than that, we're listening to you and we're deep in consideration of the budget at the moment, and we'll obviously engage.
I was under the impression that we needed a resolution. That's fine. Okay, I want to thank everyone for the discussion we had, and as Michael quite rightly said, they will be listening, and hopefully when we come to see the plenary budget, that we'll see some of our concerns taken on board. We will be going into our Metropolitan meeting shortly. We'll take a break for 5 minutes or so. And we'll come straight back into the meeting. So if I could ask you maybe to log out, or not, don't log. I could ask you just to silence them maybe, okay? And we'll come back to the meeting shortly. to our October Metropolitan meeting. And just to say too that I also want to welcome those that may be logged on or watching this meeting online. You're all very, very welcome indeed. I'll go straight to honour for our prayer and our roll call, please.
Nana mana hags na vicar spirit na amen. Cur the vanector and gunu shot agus troig chin and our good day breath son the bubble 3 kirst or dearna amen. Nana mana hags na vicar spirit na amen. Councillor Donald Barry.
Present.
Councillor Joanne Bailey.
On shot.
Councillor Joe Conway.
On shot.
Councillor Davy Daniels.
On shot.
Councillor Pat Fitzgerald. Councillor Jim Griffin.
On shot.
Councillor Pat Fitzgerald, just there again.
On shot, sorry.
Councillor John Hearn.
On shot.
Councillor Joe Kelly.
On shot.
Councillor Christina Kiley.
On shot.
Councillor Eddie Mulligan.
Online.
Councillor Jason Murphy.
On shot.
Councillor Lolo Sullivan.
Shot. On shot.
Councillor Jody Power.
On shot.
Councillor Eamon Quinlan.
On shot.
Councillor Frank Quinlan.
Present.
Councillor Mary Roach.
Here.
Councillor Seamus Ryan.
Present.
And apologies, Councillor Wise.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I have any votes of sympathy, please? Yeah. Councillor Eddie Mulligan. Sorry, Eddie.
Sorry, Mayor. You're on silent, Eddie.
Apologies. Quick vote of sympathy, Mayor, for Maura Grant, I suppose, who has been very active in the South Kilkenny city side in relation to the rural communities and embracing who passed away there in the last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joe Kelly.
Dermot Goodavera. Yeah, vote of sympathy, please, to the family of Annie Kelly, late at John's Park, St. John's Park, who passed away recently. And after the meeting, I'll give the appropriate details to honour Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mary Roach.
Thanks, Mayor. Just if we could pass our sympathies to the family of the late Jerry Valentine, who just died there 2 days ago from Knockboy. Thanks, Mayor. I'll give honour the details.
Okay, that's all the ones I have in front of me. So,
Vera, could I come in there, please?
Of course. I didn't see you there, Joe. Sorry, everyone.
No problem. This is a proposal for a vote of congratulations, Mayor, for Heather O'Connor from Tramore. Heather was a member of the Irish Young Rider eventing team that were partaking in the European Championship in Sweden recently, and the team acquitted itself very well. Out of 31 nations, came out with a silver medal, and Heather was to the fore, had great performance there on her horse, Has It All, and she was the only rider in Sweden. There's 6 riders on every team. She was the only one. She had the unique distinction of being the only one who owned her own horse. So Heather O'Connor from Tramore, well deserving of the council's congratulations.
Absolutely. Yep. I think we'd all like to be associated with that, Councillor Conway. Okay. Right, we'll move on. Confirmation of minutes. I need a proposer and seconder. Proposer.
Propose Mayor Roach.
Proposer Councillor Lolo Sullivan and second Councillor Mary Roach. Okay, matters arising. Now, before I go on to matters arising, I'll only be taking omissions and errors. Any other items on the previous month's minutes can be taken up in your time on the reports. Okay, so if I don't want to have to stop anybody, but if I have to, I most certainly will. Okay, so matters arising, please. Councillor Eddie Mulligan.
Sorry, Mayor, I just think Matters Horizon needs to be examined again, because that's not my understanding of Matters Horizon.
But that can be done.
I comply with your requirements for today. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. But look, if that's what the wish of the council is, we can do that. There's a review of standing orders going on at the moment, and we can do that under that, and maybe we should. Okay, but as things stand at the moment, it's just omissions. It's just errors and omissions in the minutes. Councillor Mary Roach.
Mayor, I'll be putting down my hand as well. I don't wish to be rude, Mayor, but sure. If there's errors or omissions, they should be done before the minutes are passed, and matters arising for issues that there's nowhere else on the agenda to bring them up. And that's the type of issue I have. Okay,
we will also raise that in our review of standing orders, if that's okay. Yeah. Councillor Donald Barry.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, apologies if I have missed it, but the answers to the two queries I brought up at the last meeting were to be sent out. I could have missed them. We got a barrage of emails in. I'm just wondering where they sent out. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we'll check that with corporate and we'll come back to you, Councillor, if that's okay. Okay, we move on then to the reports. Okay. First one I have here is Councillor Eddie Mulligan, and we take them into threes. Councillor Eddie Mulligan, Councillor Donald Barry, and Councillor Eamon Quinlan. In that order, please. And remember, your time on this is limited to 2 minutes, because we do want to. Sorry, I beg your pardon. It's limited to 3 minutes because we do want to try and get everybody in. Okay. So, Councillor Mulligan.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, just would we possibly get an in-depth update on the 28 affordable housing units that we voted in on a Part 8 in Grace Dew? Just wondering where they are at the moment. In relation to the city centre, it's an issue I brought up regularly, which is the safe management of not only traffic but pedestrians in the John Roberts Square, Georgia Street, Barnstrand Street and Broad Street area. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be any correct plan down there. Having passed through there recently myself, it would be impossible for any emergency vehicles to get down Georgia Street. I see the bollards are left up regularly down at the end of Georgia Street, where you actually meet Gladstone Street. So any vehicles entering off the quay are end up doing 3-point turns or going up through Barnstrand Street, Broad Street to try and exit at Patrick Street. So I would ask as a matter of urgency that we actually might review that. Just then coming back to Johns Avenue, Mayor, and I'll finish on this. I'm quite often on about the presentation of the city centre. Johns Avenue at the moment is probably the busiest footfall area between the Waterside car park, I suppose, St Martin's School and the college down there, Water College of Further Education City Centre. I'm not sure if any councillors or the executive have walked it there recently, but it's an absolute disgrace. There's weeds going out of the centre of the roads, there's weeds going up alongside all the houses, there's discarded rubbish there, and the surface itself, I actually nearly sprained my own ankle walking up it there this evening. Earlier on today there. So I would ask that, could we look at that as a matter of priority? It is now 4 years since the Apple Market was done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donald Barry.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, delighted to hear that Michael Welch was today promoting Waterford at a tourist event, but I think it's very disappointing for us in Waterford to learn that the large-scale conference centre that was part of the Neville Group plan for the Tower Hotel has now been dropped. I think it's a big loss for Waterford. I understand that there has been meetings take place between the planning office and the Tower Hotel Group. I'm just wondering, is there anything we can do at this late stage to try and get this conference centre that was planned before in the plans back into the equation some way? I think it'll be a huge loss for Waterford and for all those working in the tourism industry. We're heading into a very hard winter and there's going to be job losses, and a conference centre of that scale for Waterford is badly needed. And Board Foilta has even said that Waterford is lacking a large-scale conference centre. Business tourism, it's worth about 760 million a year. And I think the Board Foilta want to even grow that, and we should be looking for a slice of that cake. It'll be a terrible shame on us in Waterford if we're going to have to face looking at those buildings there in Lombard Street, grass growing out of the shoots, paint hanging off the walls there, and an open air pigeon coop, when we should be looking at one of the best hotels in the southeast. And just asking, before it's too late, for the sake of Waterford City, is there anything can be done to get that conference centre that was first planned back in onto the equation there? And my second thing is the Kilbarry, is the old Knights Templar graveyard there in Kilbarry. I was asked to go down there recently, and it's a very historic site, both locally, nationally, international connections to it, and it's in a bad state of overgrowth with bushes and briars and everything grown over the trees. I'm just wondering, has the council any plan of action to bring the graveyard back to a respectful state, and is there any plan for it going forward into the future? And the last thing is, what's the causing the delay with the people getting into the houses up in the Dial Street? They're finished there now with the past while, and this is the second time now that they got letters saying they can't go in, and some are under pressure from landlords to vacate their present accommodation.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much. And Councillor Eamon Quinlan, and then we'll go back to the executive.
Thanks, Mayor. A few questions, so I'll go at speed. First one is in relation to the Tramore Public Realm Works. Can Economic Development please advise us what the original timeline for this development was supposed to be, what the original costings for this development, what they were supposed to be, what we were supposed to spend, and then lastly, how much money have we spent to date on this development? I know a new projected timeline is now given for November, but I would like those three specific questions answered by Economic Development. In relation to Ballybricken and the Kyo practice specifically, Mayor, I passed an ambulance parked outside the Kyo practice today. Unfortunately, that is quite a common occurrence. When people take ill, they're actually brought to the Kyo practice, which then has to call for an ambulance. Unfortunately, when it parks up in the front, it does cause a bit of traffic problems with the crossing point there. Would it be possible for roads to look at perhaps converting one of the regular car parking spaces in the area to an ambulance space, so the ambulance would have somewhere to pull in there in future when they help people? And lastly, Mayor, in relation to our Lyhalf development in the Grays Dew area, could I get a comment from Housing in relation to our options on this? We've been sitting on this now for several years. We had some land, we've mixed it in with some private person's land. The density has to be so high that it's triggered on Board Penola to request another secondary entrance. To do a secondary entrance, we have to essentially buy or CPO several people's front gardens. It's stalled out the project. Nothing's happened. We're not delivering any housing there. Is it possible, for us to take our land, our road frontage land, and to walk away from this, I suppose, project and to use it to create affordable housing ourselves, and leave, I suppose, the rest of it to the private entities for private developers to deal with without our assistance? That's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Right, we'll go back to the executive. Councillor Mulligan had a number of questions there in relation to affordable units. And also in relation to safe traffic and up around the city centre. Could somebody take those for me, please?
Chairman, if you'd like, I'll take a couple of.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah.
Housing ones there. It's Paul here.
Paul, I beg your pardon. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Mulligan had a query on the 28 affordable units. The situation with that, Chairman, is that is going back to the department through what's now called the Affordable Housing Fund. It was being funded through what was called as the Service Sites Fund. That has now become, through the introduction of Housing for All, the Affordable Housing Fund. It's a name change to a large extent, and it doesn't mean anything in particular, but what it does mean is that we are proposing to avail of the affordable housing funding, which is specifically targeted for various types of the delivery of affordable housing, this being one. Actually, on the ground, there's site investigation about to commence in the next week or two, just to finalise the ground conditions, the services and the costs. So that will give us a firm basis to proceed with the services and the infrastructure. There was a query on Doyle Street and delay there. I can tell you, Chairman, there's an issue, and there isn't in Doyle Street. It's a technical issue. To be honest with you, it's to do with the soundproofing on some of the units, and it has meant that there's a slight delay of a couple of weeks until that is rectified. It's a relatively minor non-compliance issue, Chairman. Councillor Quinlan raised the issue of the Grace Dew proposed LIHAF, and as you're probably aware, Mayor, that received Part 8 planning a couple of years ago. We, for various reasons, including synergies and what were perceived at the time to be advantages for delivery, we advertised in expressions of interest on that site. There was one applicant, and we engaged with that applicant, and as you rightly point out, Councillor Quinlan, the project hasn't been delivered to any great extent. We are currently reviewing our options, and as you say, one of those options is to look at delivering affordable housing on our own piece of ground, if we put it like that, and the LIHAF road separately from the overall development that was originally proposed, and that might take out some of the planning issues. So that is currently being discussed with the department and with the housing agency.
Thank you. We had an issue there raised about a conference centre. Who's going to take that from me? Raised by Councillor Barry.
I can come in on that, Mayor. Liam McGree from Planning here.
Thanks, Liam.
Yes, Mayor, we have an application from the Tower Hotel, which was received in late September, on the 28th of September. The planning reference number on that, for any councillors that might be interested in having a look at it, is 21902. It is true that the large conference centre that was previously proposed is no longer being proposed, but they are proposing significant extensions to the existing conference facilities within the hotel, the function rooms and the large multi-purpose room within, and also there's a business suite to be created, or a number of interconnecting rooms to the front. They are also proposing works which would tidy up the rear elevation of the building. There are some issues there. We have been in discussions with them, and we have stated that it would be the local authorities' preference if they could maybe look again at their proposals, and maybe could include a larger conference facility on the same footprint, and maybe again look at how they're treating the Lombard Street elevation. But as I say, we have a live application before us at the moment that we have to consider and that we have to decide, but we will continue to work with the owners and operators of the hotel to see if we can maximise the use of that facility.
Okay, thank you. And before we proceed any further, Councillor Mulligan did ask questions in relation to this traffic management up around the city centre. I'm not sure, were they dealt with, Councillor Mulligan?
They weren't, Mayor. No, I'll take that and one or two other questions that come up, if that's okay at this stage. Yeah. Councillor Mulligan's, as you referenced, his questions in relation to city centre traffic management. That is an issue we've been looking at over the past couple of weeks, Councillor, and I suppose we've been looking at the current situation after we've been surveying traffic movements on the street, both I suppose during the day and in particular weekends and so forth. I have another meeting with the team tomorrow morning to, I suppose, come up with some ideas in terms of how we're going to manage it. But it is, I suppose, an active project with the moment, and we will be hoping to implement some changes up there in the coming weeks. But I said it's as much at the moment as trying to gather information, get a handle on what's actually happening up there, and before we make any decisions on it. In relation to Johns Avenue, I'd certainly agree it's in a pretty poor condition, and I'll ask the area engineer to have a look at that and see. Like, I know we had proposals to do something with it there a year or so ago, and we need to resurrect those and see if we can bring those back into play at this stage. With respect to the graveyard, the Knights Templars graveyard out of Kilbarry, that, as far as I understand it, is in private ownership. It's not one that falls within my own remit, but we might talk to the conservation officer about that and see is there any way, is there anything we can do to either influence it, or is there any money we can ask that we can source that would allow us to undertake works out there, or even what the legal situation is there with respect to us gaining access to it or otherwise. Councillor Quinlan brought up the question of the public dwelling works. I don't know that we have anybody here from economic development who would be able to answer that. And I think I'll have to refer that back to my colleagues in economic development and maybe get back to the council.
I think Lisa might be here, is she?
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. Sorry, Fergus, I'm here this evening.
Sorry. Yeah, so my apologies, Lisa. If you can just hold your fire for 1 second, I'll come back. Councillor Quinlan's question in relation to Ballybricken ambulance parking. we'll have a look at that. I'm not too sure. There's a thing, a legal thing, for want of a better word, in terms of parking called an eminence bay. But look, we'll have a look at it and we'll see if there's something that can be done up there. While I'm at it as well, I would like to introduce Nicola Keating to the meeting as well. Nicola is a new senior exec engineer with us, and she's taking over from Barbara Stosage in traffic management. And Barbara has moved on to work with the active travel team, and Nicola will be taking her place. And Nicola joins us from the water services team in the city and county, and heretofore previously would have worked with Tipperary. So Nicola will be looking after any issues from now on with respect to traffic lights, public lighting, parking, and so on and so forth.
You're very welcome to the meeting.
This is our first day of the job, so go easy on her.
We'll take it easy on you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, back to Lisa. Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Ferguson, through the chair. Just in response then to Councillor Quinlan's queries, when the work started back in January 2020, the estimated completion time was 12 months. Obviously, there have been numerous delays due to COVID closure and changes to work practices that were implemented post-COVID, which would have changed the timeline, and the majority of the works on Main Street are due for completion now in November 2021. The original tender price for the project was 2.1 million. The current predicted outturn at the moment is 2.4 million.
Okay. Right. There was a question there in relation to the Tramore public realm. I'm not sure. I don't think we got an answer to that. Maybe somebody might take that for me.
I think the chair, was that just in response to Councillor Quinlan's questions there? Did I address them properly?
Yeah, Lisa, those are the questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, our next speakers then in this particular order are Councillor Jason Murphy, Councillor Joe Kelly, and Councillor Pat Fitzgerald. So Councillor Murphy, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Both my questions are on the same topic in relation to traffic in the city centre. I know Councillor Mulligan touched on it too. I believe traffic within the city centre now is at a critical point and is having a hugely negative effect on the economic development of the city. I've raised this at previous meetings. It seems to be getting worse, particularly along the Manor, Parnell Street, the Mall and down the Quay. Even on a Sunday now, you have traffic backing up onto the Manor all the way down the Quay. I'm glad to see that Fergus said there's a study taking place. Could this study or survey also include a study to ascertain how much vehicles, how much traffic are using our city as effectively a through road coming from the Cork direction and back again, not using the bypass, heading through the city, causing all kinds of congestion and having a hugely detrimental effect on the economic growth of the city centre. I believe that Waterford City is probably one of the last cities in Ireland that has effectively still been used as a through road to other destinations. Is that something we can have a look at? And if that study can take place, could we see the results? And my other point is in relation to traffic management too, and in particular in relation to the 5-axle ban around the city. What are the penalties for breaching, if you like, the 5-axle ban? And how many fines have been issued in the last 12 months in relation to any breaches of the 5-axle ban? Are those figures available to us? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe Kelly. Mayor.
Again, I'll be brief. I just have a couple of things. I was away on annual leave for the last Metro meeting, so I hope I'm not covering ground from that meeting, but just very quick updates. The water feature in the People's Park, there were to be consultants appointed and all of that and people to fix it up. I don't know if that has happened yet, but I'd like an update on where that is. The playground in Railway Square, that was removed. I understood that was to be replaced again with new materials, new games, whatever, things they can climb on for the children. I'm wondering where that's gone. On a roads issue, there's a manhole right outside Presentation Gardens, our new housing units there, and cars are bumping into it left, right and centre. It's just by the pedestrian crossing. I'd appreciate it if somebody could raise that shore a bit. Also on the same road, Vincent White Road, towards the end of it, towards the bottom roundabout, the road is badly damaged. I think it's through springs in the area. I'm not sure. Cars are now starting to cross to the upper side of the road as they pass that, and it's dangerous. The fourth one is an old one again in the Apple Market, the footings of the various barriers that go around, you know, pubs and stuff like that, they have been causing a trip hazard for a while. And I've raised that many a time, and it's to be looked at, and it's been looked at, and forever it's been looked at, and I don't think anything has actually been done. Last week I had a look anyway, and they weren't done. So I wonder where that's gone. And while I'm on that, I noticed, I think something came out during the week that Waterford now has one of the highest, or the highest number of claims against the council of all the county and city councils. So I think something needs to be done, and I've raised that many a time. And the very last query, Mayor, is a housing thing. There's a building in the Glen, I think we bought it opposite the showboat, and we were maybe going to convert it to apartments or something. And maybe that's all in train, but I'm just wondering what's the update on that. It's a fairly substantial enough building, and I believe we bought that on either under agreement or CPO, but they're really it. Any answers to those would be appreciated.
Thank you very much. And final person in this, Councillor Pat Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just got 2 items here.
Thank you.
One, the first one is roads, and it's to do with the Cheek Point Pier. And for people that are not aware of it, like it's a protected structure, and it's stood there for 170 years. And probably for 160 of those 70 years, like they had no problems with it. But twice in the last 10 years, this is the second time in the last 10 years, the council has had to intervene due to kind of serious structural cracks in the quay. And quite a lot of the local people would say that is due to a large build-up of silt due to changes in the direction of the flow of the river by kind of man-made changes. And like I was just wondering, like is like the procedure on the quay now, will it be successful? Hopefully it will, and hopefully we won't have to go at it again. But look, that is something I would be concerned about going into the future. The second thing I want to ask about is local authority sites. There's been 5, or there could even be 6 local authority sites in Dunmore East, in the Coxtown area of Dunmore East. They've sat there for probably the last 15 years. They're fully serviced sites. There's even walls built around these sites. And, you know, if you drive past these sites, like they're full of briars, they're full, you know, there's dog roots and briars and thistles and everything growing in them. And like, I've asked several times about these sites, like, why are they still sitting there when there is a massive housing crisis in the city, in the county, and really in Dunmore East, local people haven't a hope of buying a house in this day and age. So I believe, like I've asked several times, and I was always told they'll get back to me. They get back to me. No one has ever got back to me regarding this question, and I'm asking it again. And I hope to get an answer this time, or I hope to see, like, well, what is the plan for these sites? Because the developer that originally developed the whole complex here was forced to hand over those sites. So look, why was he forced to hand over the sites if nobody's going to build on them? Thank you.
Okay, we have a number of questions there. Maybe in relation to traffic, and I think Councillor Murphy raised in relation to traffic in the city centre and the 5-axle ban. Maybe if somebody could take that for me. Fergus, is it?
Yeah, I'll take those and a couple of those, Mayor, there. That's okay. The traffic in the city centre, we'd be well aware of it, and I suppose it has been building, I suppose, back to up to what we call the pre-COVID levels over the past few months since the restrictions lifted. We are obviously monitoring it and would be keen, I suppose, to ensure that we can get traffic in and out of the city centre as quickly as efficiently as possible, I suppose. The study that are referenced earlier on in response to Councillor Mulligan's question was primarily around the pedestrian zones in the city and the times that they're open. So that's around Georgia Street, Barnstrand Street, John Street, Michael Street, and so forth. But we are separately at the moment looking at that route between the Manor, Parnell Street and the Cork Road, in terms of the signals, the traffic signals on those routes, looking at, in particular, I suppose, with the focus on how can we improve the bus priority measures on those routes. So we are undertaking a study on that at the moment, and we would hope to introduce some changes on that route, hopefully later on this year or early next year. I mean, just by way of general comment, I would suspect that the vast majority of the traffic transiting through the Cork Road and out onto the Quays is probably, as you suggested, Councillor Murphy, just transiting through the city. I don't think it's actually stopping in the city for shopping, retail, or other business. We will be undertaking further studies as we go along, but that I suppose is a somewhat more complex study. It's what you would refer to as an origin and destination study, in that you would actually have to try and ascertain when people are coming in the road, where are they, what is their where they're coming from, and what is their destination. It's a bit different than just doing, say, an automatic traffic count. But we will have a look at that in time as well. On the 5-axle ban, the enforcement and the fines and that are a matter for the Gardaí. We don't, and the council as such, either through our traffic wardens or otherwise, don't have any powers of enforcement of that. So that's really a question for the Gardaí to ascertain what level of enforcement activity or fines that are enforced. That I would be aware that they do undertake enforcement activity from time to time, and we certainly would have had contact with them over the last number of years in relation to that when issues have arisen. So I can endeavour to find out, but I'm not too sure how readily how readily available that information might be. Councillor Kelly had a couple of questions there in relation to, I suppose, parks or the water feature in the People's Park and the Pocket Park as we're looking at it out in Railway Square. We have appointed a consultant at this stage in the water feature in the People's Park, and we'd hope to make progress on that fairly quickly. We have had a delay on that over the summer months, and on the, I suppose, in the Pocket Park at Railway Square, because I had an engineer working on that, Daniel Roach, but Daniel unfortunately left our services back in late June, early July of this year, and I've only had a replacement appointed within the past week and a half or so. So we lost a bit of time on that over the summer, on those two projects over the summer months, but we'd hope to catch up on those reasonably quickly now at this stage. I've noted Councillor Kelly's questions are represents in relation to the condition at Vincent White Road, and I've asked the area engineer to have a look at those. The other question there that was relevant to myself, I think, was Councillor Fitzgerald's questions in relation to Cheap Point Pier. We would have carried out a survey of the pier, Councillor, before we appointed specified the current phase of works and appointed the current contractor. We would be happy that they will address the issues that are there in the pier, but I suppose what you are looking at there, I mean, as you referenced yourself, it is a 170-year-old masonry structure in a marine environment. It is subject to wear and tear over that period of time and to erosion. And what we're doing at this stage is hopefully a long-term job that will keep it structurally sound for the next couple of decades. There were a couple of other questions there, Mayor, that might relate.
Yeah, there was question in relation to
housing.
Housing in relation to the building in the Glen. And there was also Councillor Pat Fitzgerald asked in relation to a number of local authority sites. Who have we here from housing?
Paul Johnson is there.
Paul Johnson. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Mayor.
That's okay.
Yeah, Councillor Kelly asked about the property in the Glen. If I think it's the same one, Councillor Kelly, it's number 29, the Glen, opposite, what was the Showboat? Is that right?
Yes, it's opposite the Showboat, a fairly substantial building.
Yeah, it was one that was offered to us, Councillor, and we did acquire it. It is already divided into 4 apartments. It's a protected structure, so we've already done some investigation into the requirements for the conservation. We'd be proposing to retain it as 4 apartments. It's in what's called the Buy and Renew Works Programme, so we can come back to you with an update on that. But to confirm, it is in our ownership, and we will be refurbishing it. Councillor Fitzgerald had a query on sites in Dunmore East. And yes, as you say, Councillor, there are a couple of undeveloped sites in there. I think these particular ones you're referring to were acquired through Part 5 back probably 10 years ago. I suppose to answer that, we do intend to develop those sites, Councillor, but to date it has been, this is not to give an excuse, but to date it has been a resource issue and a resource capacity issue to get round to all of those sites that are in our ownership, and we will be coming with a comprehensive update to you on whatever land bank that we have, and I think that has been asked through a separate query, but we will be coming back to you with, and some of these will translate into Part 8 proposals, whether they're for social housing or affordable housing, as the case may be. Now that the Affordable Housing Fund is there and is available, we do intend to use it, and as you rightly point out, Councillor.
Okay, I think that's them all. Right, our next three are Councillor Jody Power, Councillor Jim Griffin, and Councillor Christina Kiley. So in that order, and again, Councillor Jody Power first. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Power, Mr. Mayor. I have 4 things that I need to discuss with you, the council today. Number 1 is the Red Star Football Club has been calling me and getting on to me with regards to finding a pitch for them, and I'm sure to with other councillors as well. They've been founded 40 years ago, and they're still looking for a home. Apparently they were leasing property and they had to leave. So is there anything we can have? And they're looking for it in the Ballygunner area, by the way. We know that in the outer Ballygunner area would be preferable, because we know we've got huge housing estates earmarked to go in there in the next couple of years. So again, a bit of sporting facilities for the club out there would be really advantageous at this stage. The second thing I want to talk about, and I hope the council can answer me on this. This is in Water Street. Now that De La Salle has opened up again, and the schools around the De La Salle area, have opened 3 schools in the area, they've opened up again. Water Street is absolutely chock-a-block, and there's no relief for the residents there. I did approach the management of De La Salle before, and they were willing to sit down with the council, and they said they would. And I just wonder, has that happened to try and alleviate the situation? Because there was talk of them donating some land for a drop-off area in the Water Street area. I'd like to know if that came to any fruition on that. The third thing I'd like to say is the Community Monuments Fund. We see there was a 100,000 grant in 2001, in 2021 for monuments. Is there any way we can get that money, or get money next year for the three singers that we thought we voted for, that we'd have a monument to, okay, in the city centre coming up? The last thing then as well is, on Friday night, some of the councillors and myself visit the Helping Hands up in St. Patrick's Gate, up on Patrick Street, and I must say what we witnessed there was harrowing. It was harrowing in one sense, that the depravity of the people there that were being looked after, and the needs were so dire. Again, just for a bit of fresh food, a bit of hot drink or something for the people calling in. 50-odd people called in on the Friday night, and with the volunteers up there, they're fighting against nothing, like with intent in the back garden of this old church, and without any toilet facilities. Now, I know they've been onto the council to try and get a new premises, and the council started looking at that. But in the meantime, would it be possible that the council could put a portaloo or something up there so people can have a toilet actually in the place then as well? With regards to the Cheek Point Pier, if I can just follow on with Councillor Fitzgerald there, the engineers and the council, would it be possible to get the engineers' report that they gave on the problems that were in the pier, okay, and the remedial actions that are going to be taken to do it? Because looking at it, I have some serious questions of what's going on down there at the moment, as Councillor Fitzgerald alluded to. I don't think it's going to be a permanent solution the way things are at the moment, from what I can see. So perhaps we can have a chat offline with you, Fergus, later on, and to try and find out what's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jim Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, could I just ask for roads maybe to go over to St. Killian Place and Ferrybank to do some repairs to the potholes over there and to the gully machine? I would actually think the gully machine could do it going through a lot of our estates in Ferrybank. It hasn't been over there in quite a considerable amount of time. They're always caught in the middle over there. They're neither with Waterford or Kilkenny in certain aspects, when no matter what you get looking for, it's just the way we voted and the way we were kind of shafted, I think, by Minister John Paul at the time, that they always seem to be in limbo over there. They don't get a fair crack at the whip at all, and we'd be fighting for everybody and everything. As well as that, Mayor, could I ask when the road speed review is coming? I think we're supposed to be looking at it soon enough, but a response that the residents at the Glen Road out in Tramore got was that if they tidied up their sight lines, that it would give them better access and egress out of their homes. Now, some local authority in Waterford years ago gave them planning permission there. I think if anyone is aware of the 6 or 7 houses on the Glen Road, they're in impeccable condition. The hedgerows there are always tidy and so neatly kept for as long as I can remember, long before I was ever a councillor. And I think
you know, we should be able to do something along that road to slow down the speed. I suppose for housing, I'd just like to ask Paul, on the Flynn site at the GEA there up at the GA in Riverstown in Tramore, is there any delay on that site, or have we any idea when, or will we be getting any of that stock, or is it going to another housing body that we might be putting them up on choice-based letting? Would you have any update on that? And finally, Mayor, on the Chapel Lane, I've raised the Chapel Lane so many times about the surface on the Chapel Lane. It's a very small, narrow, sharp piece of ground going up to the church. But with all the interchanges and that we've done with the roads up there, one-way systems, there's an awful lot of people now get dropped on the Mayor's Walk and the surrounding areas, and they go towards Ballybricken taking the shortcut through the chapel, whether it is to say a quick prayer or just for the shortcut. I've been promised for several engineers now that there'll be tarmac or something left over from a big job that would resurface Chapel Lane, and I'd just love if we could get it done for this year. And thanks for your time, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kiley. Councillor Kiley.
Sorry, I was muting and unmuting. Thank you, Mayor. My main query is again in relation to the public realm works in Tramore Main Street. Councillor Quinlan has already raised it this evening. Look, it's showing signs of being an absolutely stunning piece of public realm, which is already bringing new businesses to the area, and credit is due to the craftsmanship involved. But there's no doubt that the delays have just gone on and on. I'm a resident of the area. I can see it out my front window. Is there a possibility that is it set in stone that it'll finish the end of November, or is there a possibility to be further extended? I do think that going forward, I think it would be great if there was an option of updating residents in cases where planned works, where extensions have to happen for planned works beyond the intended time frame. Like, it would be really, really useful if something was maybe put up on, if there was a page on the council website just to give updates. You know, residents and business owners, they're reasonable people, and if they'll be more likely to be understanding in future cases if they're kept informed as to why there are extensions. Also in Tramore, just a few other items in Tramore. Is there an update on the time frame for works on the train station? Fencing was installed a few weeks ago, and I'd hope to see windows and doors installed. And also the really lovely awning at the back for market space. Is there any update on that coming into use, or is one dependent on the other? And also I note that the land adjacent to the train station is now up for sale as well. Is it something the council might look at buying, just in terms of extending the footprint there? Just specifically for Fergus, I guess, just on the active travel plan for Tramore, the plan that will just make it easier for people to walk, cycle or scoot just to get around the town. Has that commenced? Is a footpath survey part of that? An awful lot of the footpaths in Tramore are in an awful way altogether. Like the funding is there from the government for active travel and footpath repair falls under that, and I know it's hard to get all that money spent, and there's some great work is being done around, but it's just, will that be incorporated into the active travel plan? Also, is there any update on the Tramore Ring Road cycle lane, the Tramore Waterford cycleway, and walking and cycling infrastructure for the residents of Newtown Glen? I know that's been talked about for quite a while now. And then last but not least, this is my first meeting, so it's my first chance to raise the Grand Hotel in Tramore, which I can also see out my front window. I know it's been raised on numerous occasions by my colleagues in the ward here, but I'm just wondering, is there any update, or is there any new development, or is there any new route available to us to address it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to the executive.
Mayor, I'll take a few of them, and maybe some of the last I might come in. And Councillor Power had a couple of questions there. One was in relation to the Water Street and congestion and the De La Salle. It's the first I suppose I've heard of any potential for somebody to donate land for a drop-off area, whatever the case may be. We'd be quite happy to engage with the school, but I mean, I don't see the council in terms of our overall active travel strategy providing drop-off or car pick-up or drop-off areas. But certainly if there's an issue there in relation to traffic and the school thinks they might be able to, I suppose, provide some part of the solution. we'd be quite happy to have an engagement there. The Cheek Point Pier, what I might ask is doing that when Councillor Power, if you could talk to either John Gallagher or the area engineer or Conor O'Neill, who's the district engineer, in relation to getting some detail on the plan on that, and maybe to take that one offline. Councillor Griffin had a couple of questions there in relation to St. Killian's Place. I'll pass those on to the area engineer and ask him to have a look at that and review what the situation is over there, and to prioritise any immediate action that's required there. On the speed limit review, we'll be starting that probably early next year. At this stage, we're just coming up on 5 years since we did the last special speed limit review, so we'll be starting that, as I think, probably either just before or very shortly after Christmas. On Chapel Lane, I think we should be able to get to that within a matter of weeks at this stage. We have a contractor appointed to do some small-scale macadam works for the city, and Chapel Lane is on that list at the moment. In relation to Councillor Kiley's questions on the Tramore Project Realm, the end of November is the date we have at the moment, but in terms of casting that in stone, forgive the pun to some degree, it's very difficult to do, because at this time of the year we're into, I suppose, that the potential for weather disruption. We would have lost a bit of time there in September due to a number of wet days, and it all depends, really, it very much depends on the weather in terms of the progress on that. But I mean, largely speaking, yes, on target for the end of November. But if we get a wet week, say somewhere between now and then, the project could go back by a couple of days on it. In relation to the active travel plan for Tramore, we'll be developing that. That's probably a next year project for us, and we will be including footpath upgrades and repairs within the town centre of Tramore, as we would elsewhere as well, as part of that, where they become part of the active travel network. We will be bringing proposals to this council within the next couple of months in relation to both the Ring Road and Tramore, in relation to the cycleway and that, and also the new town Glen. We have preliminary drawings in from the consultants on both of those at the moment, which we're reviewing. We have some comments and changes to make on those, but before we go, and once we have, I suppose, ironed out some of the technical issues on those, we'll be coming back to council with to commence probably a part 8 on some and section 38 on others. There were the ones that I had, Mayor. I think there's probably a couple of questions there.
I think, Lisa, sorry, there was a question from Councillor Kyle in relation to the
Grand Hotel.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. I think Donald O'Morco is there.
Yes. I might jump in there. Yes, the owner of the Grand Hotel, in its last appearance in court, applied to the judge for an extension of 8 weeks to carry out the work on foot of our Section 11 notice under the Derelict Sites Act. So they've had their time adjourned to, it's the 8th of November is the date I received subsequent to our last appearance in court. On foot of that, equally, the local authority have been asked to assess the costs associated with the outstanding works on the Grand and bring that to court for hearing in November. So the owner is currently still due to attend to the works as specified in the schedule associated with Section 11 notice.
Okay, thank you. We had a question there in relation to the Flint site in Tramore. Was that answered? Can anyone?
Do you want to take that, Paul, or will I, Claire, here?
In relation to the
Flint site in Tramore at the GA field.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
Yeah. We are working with an approved housing body, and there's 24 units as part of that, which we will be nominating to the approved housing body by the end of this year, early next year.
Okay. Thanks for that. Okay, I don't think there's any other outstanding question there. Sorry, in relation to the helping hand, I think, I'm not sure who raised that. Sorry, it was Councillor Power in relation to the helping hand, and if it's possible to get a portable toilet up there, can that be done?
Mayor, I'm not too sure actually whose area that falls into. Councillor Power also had another question in relation to the Community Monument Fund and Red Star Football Club and a pitch for them. There are ones that certainly wouldn't be within my remit as such. I'm not too sure whether the Helping Hands would come under housing, homeless services, or Claire, maybe. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Could I ask in particular in relation to the Helping Hands one that we get somebody to answer that and go back to Councillor Power, or more importantly, go back to the people themselves?
I'll take on to answer it and come back to Councillor Power on it, whether it's within our remit or not, but I will take on to answer it and come back.
That's great. That's great. Thanks very much.
Would that answer it to one councillor there, please, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, no bother.
Thanks, Mayor.
Sorry, Mayor Fergus here. Just the other questions that Councillor Power had probably are more for our community section, I think. I'm not too sure if there's anybody there who can answer. I'm just looking down through the attendance list. We'll take them away, and I'll refer them to somebody in community. Maybe ask them to talk to Councillor Power directly on them. I think.
Can I just ask if we're taking issues away that councillors may ask here? Can I, when the answer comes back, can I ask that the answer would be circulated to all the members, because the issue's been raised here at the meeting, so it should really come back to all the members. Okay, not just to the person who asked the question. In fairness.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much, Fergus. Yeah. Okay, we have.
Excuse me, Mayor. Sorry, just a response to my questions on Tremore's train station and the market space out behind the.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Through the chair, Seamus, I can take that. We have been in discussions in relation to the market space once it's been completed to get somebody to manage the space. We haven't been successful yet. In the short term, we are working with Waterford Chamber perhaps on a pop-up solution for Christmas, but we are looking to have a longer term solution. And you just also raised a question in relation to the train station. The windows are away, getting works done with them, but we'd expect the windows to be reinstalled into the train station hopefully at the end of October. And just in relation to communication on the public realm works, we do have monthly meetings with the contractor and with our communications officer, and there's a public communication post that with an update on it. And in relation to the businesses, there is a project liaison from the contractor that's on site daily to deal with any specific queries in relation to that. The site adjacent to the train station that's for sale by Aldi, we understand that the asking price is 200,000 on that at the moment. So I'm not sure if that's within the council's remit at the moment to purchase that. We appreciate it. It is a valuable site, and its proximity in relation to the train station would obviously make it valuable. But
okay, just going down through my list there. I think I've got. Sorry, there was one question that was asked. The monument fund, was that answered?
That's one, Mayor. I'll have to take to my colleagues in the community section and see because I don't have any direct knowledge of that one.
That's grand. Okay, moving on to Councillor Daniels, Councillor Bailey and Councillor Frank Quinn in that order. Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you hear me?
I can indeed.
Okay, Mayor. Just a couple of questions there. I had a number on roads, Mayor, and thankfully they were answered at our earlier meeting there. Just one question outstanding from that. I would like to ask our Director of Services, Fergus Galvin, have we applied for supplementary funding on roads? I think we have been successful in the past, and as we members have expressed our frustration earlier at the meeting on the lack of funding for our roads, particularly in housing estates. So when you look at the funding and the taxation that government is now receiving from the taxpayer, I think, you know, we want to be doing a lot better. So my question is, have we applied for supplementary budgets and that? But we have been successful in the past, and maybe we in the future. My second point there, regarding, I think we would all agree that we have some magnificent trees throughout our parks and green spaces. And I think I would hate to see any trees being felled in any way. So with more frequent storms now, Mayor, on the way there, I would like to ask Fergus Galvin there, do we have audits on our trees in our green areas, like our People's Park? I think we would have audited there, and we haven't our number. I'd like clarification on that. Now, I walk a lot in the May Park Lane area, Nursery Lane, and all around that area, and we have some beautiful trees in the hospital on the site there. And could we ask the HSE if they could do an audit on the trees? I mean, one diseased tree could do damage to other trees, and as I said, they're things of beauty, and you know, I would hate to see anything happening. I think we'd all agree with that. So I just love clarification. Do we do surveys on our trees? One further point, Mayor, the last one. Residents at Lower Newtown, Percy Terrace are having very difficulty exiting the road onto St. John's, onto John's Hill there, particularly in the morning time. So I would ask roads if they could maybe place some boxes out on John's Hill there to help them at the junction. It's very difficult. Just a small thing might help them. So, Mayor, if I could clarification on those. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joanne Bailey. Joanne.
Thanks, Mayor. A few comments. We all know there's a housing crisis across the country, but I was looking recently on the vacanthomes.ie, and it's a great initiative. Members of the public can put into a form where, you know, vacant homes in their area. And I'm just wondering, is there many homes after coming back from them forms across Waterford? Are we doing enough to combat like the vacant homes that's in the city? And is there any plans going forward to look more further into that vacanthomes.ie? I know we have a vacant homes officer, and just like to get a breakdown of the vacant homes across our city as well. Regarding the chestnut trees, I think Councillor Daniels was just bringing up, there is a disease in the chestnut trees at the minute, and we will need to have a plan in place going forward to replant. So just something that we maybe could look at going forward. I see on our information we got in was the water stations for schools initiative, and we have a water station at the start of the Greenway in Bilberry. I'm just wondering, we spoke about it before, and it was before I came on the council, but to have other water stations within the city in the centre, in different points. I'm just wondering if there's any update on any of them water stations. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Frank Quinlan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just lead on from what Councillor Bailey just spoke about vacant homes, and I had it down to actually speak about it. Would you believe it, within a mile radius in the city from Morrison's Road, which there's 4 boarded up houses, there's 2 in the Glen boarded up, there's 2 in Morgan Street boarded up, there's 1 in Ordinagreen. Now, I don't know what the issues are with these houses. There could be family issues, but I think it might be an idea to go for a little walk around the city with the housing department. It's the only way to pinpoint out, or else send in the addresses to see what could be done and see could these be CPO'd. And that's one suggestion I had. Just on roads then as well, just the footpaths programme, and there was 800,000 allocated for this year over the 5 years. I think there's 800 a year for 5 years. And I just noticed around the city, like last year, it was brilliant to see there was lots of footpaths around the Metropolitan area, I'm speaking about anyway, being done. But I don't see that as visible this year. And I'm just wondering how much of the allocation for this year was spent already, and how many footpaths are left to be done in the city. I know they're doing a few in Clunlee. I'm just wondering, have we enough manpower or women power to do these footpaths and get them done within the time allocated and within the budget? Because as my understanding, I think there's only 6 or 8 employees to do this work, and they are being taken off do other works when they're in the middle of doing some footpaths. So I say there's a bit of a delay on. I don't see the progress being made this year compared to last year. And just when I'm on the roads as well, it's just about the lining and painting of all different areas around the city, such as Ballybricken, Ursuline, Griffiths Place, everywhere where there's islands. I was asked for the bollards, traffic signs to be replaced because they're all very, very old, and they're just not, they look very bad, and we need to kind of enhance the city as much as possible. And while they're replacing the bollards, all the curbing needs to be painted, and all the yellow boxes, and as Councillor Mary Roach said, even when you're crossing the bridge, like all the painting has gone off the road. But it's everywhere around the city. So another kind of walk around maybe with the roads department. I could hop up on my bike now with the new with Nicola Keating, and I welcome her. But as I said, there is traffic and safety issues regarding these islands, that you can't see the yellow and black paint, or the black and white paint, whichever the case may be. So they all need to be painted because it actually drags down the look of the city as well as everything else. And just one more little thing then about the new housing development in Dial Street. There's a steel partition holding up a house beside the new housing development, and it's blocking the whole footpath. And no one can
Time councillor.
Yeah, 2 seconds. And no one can walk up down the footpath, and wheelchair users can't use it. You have to walk out onto the narrow road. Is this staying there, or is it going? Because it's an eyesore as well as everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And the next is Councillor Joe Conway. Hello, Councillor Conway.
Hello, Gurmaga de Vera. A couple of things there that I want to direct towards our Director Fergus, and it relates to the Iris and the waterfall feature opposite the Majestic Hotel. I was talking to him recently about this, and is there any progress in getting a connection, because the Tidy Towns are anxious to light that up, so we might have some work to do there. Also, I hope he hasn't forgotten my request for the removal of unsuitable trees, and I'd love to see trees retained, but some few of them around Tramore have been very unsuitable and need to be taken out of there because they're damaging property and they're damaging services. I'd like to thank him and his team, Ray Hogan's team in Tramore, for the nice landscaping job that's done down there at the bottom of the Branch Road and at Tivoli, and it was lovely piece of work and well done to all concerned. Also, Fergus, to what extent are we permitted, or is our engagement welcomed in relation to the provision of yellow lines? I very frequently get asked about yellow lines. Joe, would you ask the councillors to put down yellow lines there? It's very dangerous and all that. So I'd like if we, as a councillor, as councillors, we could be informed, because I'm not too sure of the procedure myself. And I'd like to thank Barbara, who's now left this section, and Fergus and their teams for the provision of the lovely new lights on Donerail, the Donerail Walk. I'm just looking forward to seeing them now on a good dark night and how they perform. But I'm assured that they're vandal proof. They'll be well tested out there, but they do look extremely well. And the last thing I want to say is I want to compliment the Heritage Office and Joanne in particular, and Maurice Shaw, for there's a wonderful new resource on the council website called Déise Loganna. And it's a resource document about the Irish place names of the county. And for my own one, Ballycarnan is there, and even Jim Griffin's one in Lisselty is listed there as well. So no matter where you're from in the county, it's a resource, and it's wonderful for children in school or children doing homework. So parents and schools, I hope they take note. Déise Loganna, and it's a brilliant piece of work by our council, and well done to all concerned. Shin Machonsa, Mayor Gurmagat.
Now I'm going to go back to the executive, because there's a number of issues there, and I think I think I should have gone back at the end of the last council. But Councillor Daniels raised a question there about supplementary funding for roads. We'll start with that, maybe, Fergus.
Right, Mayor. Yeah, we would, as a matter of course, I suppose, apply for what you call supplementary funding, or for some additional grant funding through the various roads headings every year, and we've done so again this year. I don't know what the outcome of that will be, because again, it's really where the department, I suppose, really look across all of the local authority drawdowns of the country and assess who's overdrawn or who's underspent, or whatever the case may be, and money may become available. And if it does, as I said, we have our pitch in with the department for that at the moment, but I won't know what the outcome of that will be for probably another week or two at this stage. In relation to trees and public parks, we do, as a matter of course, inspect them on a regular basis, because we're very conscious of the safety issues there, and that would, I suppose, partially form the basis for our annual tree maintenance programs. So that question is yes, we do, and we keep a watching brief on them, and in particular those that might be coming, I suppose, older or a bit more distressed, and just obviously with an eye to public safety, otherwise, to ensure that they wouldn't cause any problems. In Lower Newtown, Percy Street, that junction of Johns Hill, we'll have a look at that and see if whether or not a hatched yellow box would be an appropriate solution there or not. Councillor Bailey had a question in relation to the water stations, the ones that we're looking at in the public schools. Councillor, are indoor units, they're an entirely different units. The ones we have, a couple of them out on the Greenway. We had looked previously at putting more of them into public spaces, and we had gotten some grant assistance there about 2 years ago, I think it was, at this stage, from one of the government departments to install the ones we put in the Greenway. We'll certainly have a look at that again and see would there be funding available that will allow us to extend the network. Councillor Quinlan had a number of questions in relation to, I suppose, I'll deal with the one in relation to lines and bollards and so forth. We've done a huge amount of work on it this year, even though it might be immediately apparent. We spent, I think, from a review I did with the lads there last week, I think we spent about 3 times the amount of money this year on lines and bollards than we had in previous years. That doesn't mean to say that it's obvious that there's still a good deal of work to be done out there, and we'll certainly will look at those on a priority basis, looking, I suppose, at the busier and more traffic junctions and areas first of all. Like there is, I suppose, and it relates in some respects to the second question that Councillor Quinlan has on the roads footpath programme. That is, I suppose, the way we're looking at that is that's a 5-year programme. So the money is there for 5 years. So if we don't spend it all, well, it's never intention to spend it all the first year anyway. But that we will be spending that on a phase basis over the next 5 years. We've made some progress on it this year. We're probably a little bit behind, not least the fact that I've referenced this before. We lost quite a few, 4 or 5 months earlier on this year with the COVID shutdowns and the restriction of doing anything, but not doing anything other than non-essential work. So we're playing a bit of catch up there. The money is there. It won't be lost if we don't use it all this year. It'll simply carry forward into next year. And we would hope to ramp up that program considerably next year. There is an issue there, I suppose, really in relation to the road lines as well as that is there's an overall shortage of, I suppose, both contractors, material inflation, and otherwise at the moment that's hitting us across every program that we're working on at the moment. We're relying on either materials, external contractors, or otherwise we are experiencing delays and significant delays and very significant cost increases all over the directorate at the moment, and that we would hope will ease sometime into next year, but at the moment it is making, I suppose, the operational side of it rather difficult. Councillor Conway, on the connection to the areas, yeah, I would have had a separate engagement with the tiny towns there last week about myself, and we certainly hope that we can make progress on that one, and we'll prioritise that. And similarly, I haven't forgotten about the trees. We have a few of those. I will try and get to those over the next couple of months. And I'd also acknowledge, I suppose, your thanks to the teams for the works both at Tivoli and at Doneraile, and I'll pass those on, your thanks on to the relevant teams there. And finally, your question in respect of yellow lines, that we certainly would welcome any inputs from the councillors on those where there are representations being made, and we can assess those. But the assessment of those is often done on technical grounds in terms of the advisability and the suitability, I suppose, and the local conditions. We can't just put them everywhere, so to speak, but if there are particular areas, we'd certainly welcome inputs from the council on that, and see if we make and if it can provide a constructive response to it, either to get them done or to rationalise why we can't do them. I think they covered the ones that I had. Mayor, there might have been a question there for housing, I think, or two.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions in relation to the vacant homes. Councillor Quinlan and Councillor Bailey asked further questions. Paul?
Mayor, yeah, I think the query was in relation to vacanthomes.ie, which is a website that's kind of co-hosted by Mayo County Council. It basically allows the public to identify and report houses that are vacant or that are identified as vacant, and then that website feeds into each local authority's own vacant homes officer. So it is quite useful in that regard. I suppose we don't solely rely on that. We have actioned several properties that would have come through that. I can come back to you. We can come back to you next separately with an actual number. But I suppose, as I said, we don't solely rely on that. We undertake our own surveys as well. We have undertaken quite a market awareness campaign that owners come directly to us for the reuse of properties, whether it's through the buy and renew, repair and lease, or even the vacant homes office also extends to providing advice and services for owners of private properties to bring them back into use as private use. So it extends right across a wide range. The other, I think Councillor Quinlan had the same query. I hope that answers that. And there was also a query on Doyle Street about the temporary steel supports that are still in place after the works are completed. They are to support one of the buildings there, and there's actually a legal case going on there, Mayor, so I wouldn't like to say a whole lot more about it than that.
Okay, now we're making good progress. We have 3 speakers left. Councillor Lolo O'Sullivan, Councillor Mary Roach and Councillor John Heron. Okay, so Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to concur with Councillor Conway on praise for the lights on the Doneraile. I know both himself and myself had been on several times in the springtime about it, so it's great to have it done. There's great work being done on the footpaths on Priest Road, so Councillor Quinlan needn't worry. Obviously, Fergus is spending the footpath money in Tramore this year. If possible, could we look at putting a flashing speed sign coming into Tramore to inform motorists of the speed they're doing, because they don't seem to realise that they go from an 80 to a 60. And the speed coming in there is quite high. I think that if we had the flashing sign, it might make a difference. I welcome the work that's commenced in the pier. It's great to see it back in operation. I've mentioned this several times at several meetings, and I really would like to see something being done about it, Fergus, and that's in relation to the possibility of a pump track for skating in Tramore, maybe down by the Inclusion Park. The lands down there are very suitable, and I would like to meet you to discuss the possibility of putting in a pump track maybe before the budget. And I am delighted to see that there's adult exercise equipment going in the city, but we have pleaded for adult exercise equipment in Tramore for a long time. I'm sure Councillor Conway remembers this coming up on many occasions. And Maurice Conway, in fairness to him, went and did a survey, but everybody seems to be getting the adult equipment before Tramore, and I'd just like to know what is happening. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mary Roach. Sorry, Mary.
Thanks, Mayor. Apologies, I have my camera off just for the sake of the internet strength here today. Mayor, the issue I was going to raise under matters arising was just a response from housing on Williamstown Glen. It's not on the report, but if they go back to the July minutes, they'll see the questions. I've been raising it since then. In regards to the river walk along the shore there, Mayor, could I ask when we can expect to see that piece in the middle completed and joined up? On the quay, Mayor, the lights on the quay from pretty much a little bit past the clock tower down to past the plaza, the lights on the middle, between the road and the car park, have been out since I got back on the council practically, and I'm just wondering, I don't seem to be getting anywhere in terms of getting them done. And can I also ask how long is the lease left on the Keeverfolk car parks on the quay? I know the council bought out the freehold there. Also, can I ask, just in relation to the Dunmore Road, Mayor, the Tramore Road roundabout, I've had representations from several people coming in from Tramore that the way the traffic flows, they are not getting the chance to come out, and I've witnessed it myself several mornings in recent times, that the traffic is flowing in such a way that the traffic backs up a substantial different distance to Tramore, and it might need to be actually looked at to have a traffic signalled roundabout there in the mornings. Also, there's an issue here on my own road here at Dunmore Road at Oscars. The traffic coming in the Dunmore Road coming up to the Oscars roundabout is getting held up similarly by traffic coming from the right, which is largely being caused by people using the road around through Ballinakil Downs as a rat run to give them priority over the traffic coming in the Dunmore Road. And I think that's something that might need to be addressed. Also, Mayor, there was an accident on Wilkins Street, and it follows on from what Councillor Daniels and I think it was Councillor Murphy was talking about there in Delisle. That entire area, Wilkins Street, Lower Newstown, Percy Terrace, Water Street, Passage Road, all needs to be looked at. We took a plebiscite there a couple of years ago about making the whole area and looking at a one-way system. It very narrowly was defeated. I'm not entirely sure why we took a plebiscite, because I think we should be making these decisions based on the merit of the road situation as opposed to what people want. And I really think that that's a situation that needs to be addressed and looked at. Mayor, I'm just wondering, I'm noticing all the welcome for the lights on the Donerail, and I'm wondering if they have lights on the Donerail in Tramore, why we can't have lights in the People's Park. And finally, Mayor, the cycle scheme that I know you, Mayor, have been working on for a long time, went out to public consultation, and I'm wondering, has council any role in that? Because I got quite a lot of representations about different locations for the bicycles to be located, and I'm wondering, will we be getting a report on that, or do we have any role in that, or can we have some role in that? Thanks, Mayor. I know there's quite a lot there. Apologies.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our final speaker then is Councillor John Heron. John.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Now, just a number of community groups met with us there last week, and we went out to meet the likes of Growich yourself, and they're very keen to do up some of the roads around the city with flowers. And we know we had a planting project ourselves where we bought in a couple of bags of daffodils and the likes of that for the community groups before. I'm wondering, are we doing it again this year, and what planting scheme have we thought up for it? So if they'd like to tie in, we certainly give a hand on that. The second thing, I was on the last meeting about bonfires, to be ready for Halloween. And there was a few incidents up around Kilcone, and in fairness to the guards, they put a stop to it. But just to be very conscious this year again with Halloween coming up, that we have our teams in place. And the third thing, there was a priest approached us there to do up that graveyard down in, where's it, down the bottom of Ballybeg down there. And we said we would, he wanted to say a mass. But I think if Fergus needs to put a scheme in there that it's maintained all the time. There was a resident there, Richie Houlihan, I believe he's a former employer of the council, and he had kept it very well, but he's after moving on in age now a bit. So if they could put in a scheme that they keep on top of down there. And there's also on the Old Tramore Road, another graveyard that could be opened up and cleaned up as well. It needs a bit of work. It's been boarded up for an awful long time. And thanks again for your time, Mayor.
Not at all. Thank you, Councillor Hearn. Okay, we'll bring in the executive now on these last number of queries. Councillor Lola Sullivan raised in relation to Donerail and in relation to speed sign. Maybe if somebody could start with that. Fergus, it's probably you again, is it?
It is, Mayor, yeah, and I think she was just, I would say she was just, it was, I suppose, echoing Councillor Conway's comments in relation to the pier and Donerail, and works are happy up in Peace Road at the moment. And I suppose in terms of questions, looking for a driver feedback sign on the regional road in towards something we can have a look at, or maybe even do something in terms of making the existing speed sign, the speed signs a bit more prominent. Driver feedback signs, we've had mixed experience with them, I suppose, over the past couple of years, and that they work well for a few weeks, and then the people who are using the road regularly get used to them, and they become part of background furniture, like lots of other things. But look, we'll have a look and see, because it's an issue that has come up previously. Also, in relation to the pump track, I'd be quite happy to have a chat with you separately on that one, Councillor. If you want to contact me directly on that, but we'd be quite happy to have a look at that and see is there a way of progressing that. And similarly with the adult exercise equipment, I suppose there's a sense of payoff here at the moment in that towards getting the perception is towards getting some things. The city's looking for other things and so forth, but we'll try our best to see can we balance out the various demands. Councillor Roach had quite a few questions there, and I'll try and address them and come back to me if I miss out on any of them. On the River Walk, we're currently working on the stretch which goes across the bottom of the old Glen BS site, where our contractor's in at the moment doing tree removal, and we'll be starting civil works there this week. So hopefully, I think he's about 3 to 4 weeks work on that. So hopefully by the middle of November, end of November, we should have that particular project completed. On the quay, the lights there, I know you've raised this with me last week, and I've asked the lads to check that out. So we'll keep the pressure on our contractor to progress the repair of those. At least on the Kiva Flow site, I could hazard a guess at what it is, but I won't do so in a public meeting. But I'll come back to you separately on that. I don't have that information to hand at the moment. The Tramore Road roundabout, I'm assuming you're talking about the one out on the Outer Ring Road as opposed to the one on the Inner Ring Road.
Yeah, that's right, Fergus.
Yeah. Like I travel across that way quite a good deal myself in the mornings, and there will be tailbacks, I suppose, on both the coming from both the eastern side, as in from the Dunmore Road, Williamstown area, as well as Tramore. It's a junction we'll be looking at anyway, I think, in the next number of months, because we'll be looking at the progressing the Greenway from Tramore into Waterford City, and the treatment of that junction is something we're going to have to look at now. Whether we do something in terms of the existing layout of the junction, put in a signalised junction there or whatever, I'm not too sure as yet, but it's where we're going to have a serious look at in terms of I suppose evening out both the traffic flow on it at one level, and secondly, I suppose making provision for walkers and cyclists in particular, and for those that might use the new Tramore Greenway or Tramore Waterford City Greenway, will make that up to construction. Lights in the People's Park is one that's come up before. It's a budgetary issue, really. I mean, I would have given the council, I think, indicative cost there last year at some stage. It might have been around there. I can't recall exactly what it was, but it might have been about 150, 160k of a spend on it. It comes down to budget at the moment. I don't have that in the budget. And it'll be a question that the council might consider at budget time. What we did out in the Donerail, I suppose, wasn't a new scheme. It was a replacement of existing lights that had been out there, a number of which had fallen into disrepair and had gone beyond repair, I suppose, and we had to replace those with some new lights out there. On the regional bicycle hire scheme, that was out for public consultation back in September. The public consultation period on that has now closed at this stage. I'm sure a lot of the comments that the councillors would have gotten were also fed back into the National Transport Authority, who are running the scheme. They will be reviewing those comments over the next couple of weeks, and we hadn't been notified of what they are at this stage, and there will be some level of engagement with them over the coming weeks in relation to that. But I said that the consultation period is closed. There isn't, I suppose, scope for any other inputs at this stage, other than, I suppose, the technical viability or otherwise of making some of the changes or amendments that might have been proposed. Councillor Harrington had a couple of questions there on in relation to the planting schemes. I mean, we'd be very happy to engage with GIY if they had something to offer there, or some proposal that we're quite happy to talk to them, and if they want to engage with us directly or through yourself, Councillor, we'd be happy either which way. On the bonfires, and maybe housing might have some comment on this as well from the fire safety perspective, but certainly our teams will be working over the next week and a half to 2 weeks or so as they do every Halloween to ensure that the public safety issues are being addressed and dealt with, and that where we can, we'll address all of the issues between ourselves, our fire services and the Gardaí, of course. And finally, I know I picked up another question around in relation to the old Temperance graveyard out in Kilbarry, and that's when we'll certainly have I need to talk to our conservation officer about that and see exactly what the score is with that, and what if anything we can do with that. I think that they addressed the questions that were given to me. Mayor, I'm not too sure whether there's anything there for anybody else.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm just going down through my own list here.
Sorry,
yeah, sorry, go on.
Mayor, there was just the Ballinakil Downs Rat Run and Wilkins Street, Fergus.
Oh, my apologies, Mary. Sorry, I'm in the dark here at the moment. I can't read my own writing. My apologies. Yeah, certainly Wilkins Street we'll have a look at. I kind of vaguely remember the one-way system proposal there. We might dig that out again and see what was involved in that, and maybe come back and have a separate conversation with the council on that. And the rat run, again, that's one that we had looked at there, I suppose, maybe almost 2 years ago at this stage, and it had gathered a certain momentum in terms of that rat run around the back of the Woodlands Hotel and the nursing home there, and it kind of lost steam, I think, during COVID, and it's one I'll pull it out again and see, can we have a look at that, and can we progress something on that one? There were a number of proposals had been put forward there by the residents, and I think some of the councillors in relation to making that one way or to restricting traffic on it at certain times of the end. I can't remember the exact details of this at this stage, but we'll certainly pull that back up and have a look at it and have a further conversation with yourselves on it.
I'm just going back over my own list here, and I see Councillor Bailey asked a question in relation to water stations, which I'm not sure whether that was addressed, and also there was a question in relation to, or a question or a point maybe in relation to a chestnut tree that maybe somebody might address as well. And I'm just going to see. I see people looking to come back in now.
Yeah,
so
sorry,
could somebody please take?
Yeah, the water stations one I had to answer it, Mayor, and that
Sorry,
we had. Yeah, it's a question of we had gotten grant aid for the previous ones, and we would be looking to maybe to include them in a further grant application of the department under some of their waste prevention or some of their waste prevention schemes for next year. The chestnut tree was one I didn't pick up on. I'm sorry, we don't have the.
Councillor Bailey, you asked the question, did you? I think.
Yeah, I did. Just that there is a disease in the chestnut trees at the minute, so we will have to look into forward planning into growing and having them ready. I know they're a hard tree to grow and to be ready, but it is something we have to look for the future. And just on that really quick, Paul, just on the information for the vacant homes, can that be sent out to all councillors? Just a breakdown of, you're coming back with that information. Thanks.
Yeah, I see a number of hands still up here. Briefly, Councillor Sullivan, do you need to ask a question, further question? No. Okay, Councillor John Heron, are you okay? Okay, and Councillor Eddie Mulligan, are you okay?
Mayor, if I just could come in quickly as a supplementary to Councillor Roach's representation. Just, Fergus, there's a planning application in there at the moment for 60 apartments. I know I've made a council submission myself, but the traffic management in that whole area of the roundabout that Councillor Roach is talking about, the rat run, and actually goods vehicles exiting and entering that whole complex, I'm sure roads have to make an input to the planning application. I'm just wondering, I'd be supportive of Councillor Roach's representations there. Could we look at that as a part of that planning application also, because it's all in relation to the same complex?
Yeah, I'm going to have to, sorry, thanks, Councillor Mulligan. I'm sure Fergus should take that on board.
Yeah, as the councillor said, roads would input into the planning process or into the planning application, so we'll have a look at that and comment appropriately.
Okay, I want to thank the members for the cooperation with that. We did get through the questions, and we're now going to move on with the rest of the agenda. The next item I have here on the agenda is planning, under Planning and Development Act 2000 as amended, in relation to 14 social housing scheme dwellings at Fountain Street. Paul Johnson and Anton Lennon are going to take this.
Thank you, Mayor. It's Anton here.
Or Anton, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. So just good evening, councillors. Further to the September Metropolitan meeting, when it was decided to declare a decision on the Part 8 at Fountain Street, and the request that a public meeting be held, a meeting was held on Monday, the 11th of October, on the site, attended by Paul, myself, councillors and the public. This was the second public meeting to be held that Housing attended. Previous meeting was held on the 24th of June, and also previously a workshop with the councillors was held on Tuesday, the 14th of September. At that public meeting, issues were raised by the public and reasoning was given for the decisions. The issues raised are as received in the submissions and is outlined in the housing report as issued for the September meeting. Two minor amendments are recommended to the scheme presented at the September meeting to improve parking loading for residents, businesses and customers, and they are the removal of some open space in the car park to provide a hard surface area to the rear of number 60 Fountain Street, and the extension of an existing lay-by on Fountain Street outside Walsh's Lottery Shop. That's as circulated to all members on the 7th of October. Just to confirm then that the proposed number of units remains at 14, and the net result of the proposed amendments is that there are a minimum of 21 potential spaces now being provided, which is in excess of what was previously provided. And just to clarify regarding a planning department condition that's included in the CE report that was previously issued at the September meeting, the lime tree at the entrance should be preserved and replanted within the development. Just in relation to the design of the scheme, I'd like to confirm to all members that the scheme has been designed in accordance with the Quality Housing for Sustainable Communities and other department guidelines, the Waterford City and County Council Development Plan, and most recent building regulations, including Part F and Part L, which are ventilation and conservation of fuel and energy, meaning that the dwellings are designed to NZEB. The scheme design and layout has been considered by Waterford City and County Council by an externally appointed design team in the Department of Housing. So a lot of work has gone on in that regard to get this scheme to this stage. Scale and height of the development is considered appropriate and in keeping with the adjacent properties, which are 2-storey and 3-storey, and the general topography of the area. Density is considered appropriate, as is the car parking provision. As has previously been highlighted, higher density schemes with less parking have been recommended and approved on other sites in the city. And the proposed development will provide housing. And just to point out that currently there's 893 households qualify for social housing support in the Ferrybank area. The scheme has now been proposed and recommended, has full approval from the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. And the Housing Department are keen to proceed with the proposal as presented, including the amendments as outlined, and we're seeking approval from the elected members of the Metropolitan Council. And just to confirm that a decision must be taken within 6 weeks of receipt or issue of the Chief Executive's report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Anton. Councillor Lola O'Sullivan. Lola?
Mayor, my hand isn't up.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I thought I saw it up there. Okay. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Eamon Quinlan, are you proposing?
No, Mayor, I was just going to come in. Sorry, I was a bit late on tagging the button. Is that okay?
Well, sorry, Councillor Hearn is in ahead of you now, and then I'll leave you in. Councillor Hearn. John? He's in.
Thanks, Mayor. Now, I went to visit some of the people who recently got homes.
Yeah.
And the amount of joy that they got from having houses. Not only is there 800 on the waiting list out there, that doesn't include all the people who can't even get on the waiting list because they're just above the rate of pay, or they're just below, you know, the criteria, or they're living at home with their parents in small rooms with children. And I think absolutely, I think we've given enough thought and discussion to this. I think it's time to move it on. So I have no problem proposing, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. So proposed by Councillor Hearn. Have we a seconder?
Mayor, I'll second that. Joe Conway.
Thank you very much, Councillor Conway seconding. Now, Councillor Quinlan, I'll leave you in now.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, just say thanks to Paul, Anton and the team for coming over and meeting with the residents. Their engagement has been extensive and I'd just like to thank them for it. In relation to the development, some of the key changes, we are up now to 21 spaces to help try and service the mixed residential and commercial area. The maintenance of the tree is also very welcome. However, it was, I suppose, and I want to just put it on the public record here so that there is a record of it going forward, that in relation to, I suppose, getting that balance between needed housing for an area and also for the commercial concerns, the fact that the area that we're developing, we've got green, small, aesthetic areas. We don't have a large enough area for children to play, to kick a ball. The adjoining Marymount area has no green spaces actually at all. And as such, it was put to the housing department in front of the residents at the public meeting that the development, because it consists of 8 essentially bungalows, that it would be used to preference the housing of older persons, especially those with mobility issues, which apparently, according to we checked, is within our power to do. So I would just like that reflected on the record this evening, that if this is passed and this is a planning decision, I accept that when it comes to housing allocations, they'll use it to tackle the chronic older persons who need places to live. And it's a very suitable location there with, I suppose, a pharmacy, chiropractic, various shops right there to aid independent older person living. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Quinlan. Councillor Griffin. Jim Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Quinlan just covered some of the issues I was going to bring up there, and I would like to thank Anton and Paul for hosting the last meeting over there with the residents and the businesses. They did get a chance to voice their opinions and you know get to talk to the lads about certain aspects of the development that they're not happy with, and I have to acknowledge that there were some small wins for the residents and the businesses as well, which is welcome. And it just goes to show that public consultation is so important when you're doing a development like this in such a small area where traffic management and parking, etc., going forward can be an issue. And I just hope the council will definitely see it out. Like if there is parking issues, be it the builders on site or parking issues when it's built, that they will address it like they told us they would at the meeting. And just further on from what Councillor Quinlan said, Mayor, about the older people perhaps being looked at, I think it would be important too that if we could target some of the older people from the area, if they were willing to perhaps surrender maybe some stock, or if they were looking to move into that area, that they'd be closer to the shops, closer to the post office, various different things, that we might look at the properties that they might have in our stock, maybe 2 or 3 bedrooms, which are badly needed houses for younger families of the Ferrybank area, so as that they can see that there is already then another win-win for the people in and around that area, that, you know, their sons and daughters and grandchildren are being facilitated and given a bit of priority as well, and that they get the choice of maybe those houses on CBL further down the line. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Frank Quinlan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to follow on from Councillor Quinlan and Councillor Griffin there. I was one of the other councillors who met with residents on both occasions, and as we all know, like, there is a need for housing in every area of the city as well as Ferrybank, and it is an old area, I suppose, and residents there a long time, and it's a big change coming into their lives, but it will enhance the area, it will clean up the area, and we just had concerns, the residents had concerns, and the shop owners and the businesses had concerns. So it was just to find the balance and keep everyone happy. And as I said, I'm hoping now with the new with the 8 one-beds that maybe like majority or half of them mightn't drive, so it will free up a few more places. And there's 21 places there at the moment. So I think with the 1-beds and families in the 6 beds, that it won't be kind of too many families in one area when there is a lack of facilities and a lack of play areas and a lack of things for the children to do. So it will be a nice balance. I think it will work out very, very well when it's actually done, because as I said, the concerns are with the residents, with the parking but I think the area itself will be enhanced, and it'll look very well, because there's a lot of antisocial behaviour and a lot of trouble over there in the past. So I think that will eradicate everything. Thank you.
Now, I have 2 further speakers on this, and then we're going to have to put it to a vote. Now, we've had a long discussions on this, you know, because it's gone through. We've had a workshop on it, and you know, I know some of the councillors met with the residents. So, sorry, we have 3 looking to speak on it. Councillor Quinlan, Councillor David Daniels, and Councillor Kelly, Joe Kelly, and then I think we're going to have to put it to a vote after that. Thank you. Councillor Eamon Quinlan? No. Okay, Councillor Joe Kelly. Joe?
Not good of era. Yeah, there has been a lot of consultation with the residents over there, and I attended the second meeting. I didn't even know about the first meeting, to be quite frank. And I've also been over there separately by myself, meeting various residents. I'll be voting against the proposal today. And from a previous workshop, we were advised around certain planning reasons as to why we might make such a decision. So I've written down a few of them, just so that I'm absolutely A1 in terms of whatever rules that are now being interpreted. I believe that the 14 units is too dense. I know that the council recommend that it's the right size. I think it's not. I think it's perhaps 3 or 4 units more than it should be. So that's one reason. Definitely a planning reason. The second planning reason is that it's been built effectively on a dual carriageway. That's the next road beside it. And as I asked at the meeting, where the doors coming out the back, if you call it that way, or out the front of the buildings, and they're coming out to the front onto the footpath where the dual carriageway is, I believe that's a too high a danger for the residents, and indeed any children who may be living in the proposed development if it goes ahead. The third one is, again, related to children. It's already been recognised that there is no real play area there at all. I'm not absolutely sure the actual planning requirements in specific amounts of green area per unit, but I don't believe that density is met, and was pointed out by Councillor Frank Quinlan that the rest of the area of Marymount has no green areas at all either. So I think that's another problem with the system. The next one is in terms of traffic flow and traffic volumes around that area and into Marymount, and indeed back out of this development if it goes ahead onto what's a very busy dual carriageway. I don't think it's appropriate siting for that development at all. I think there's definitely traffic hazards and implications involved. And very lastly, parking issues. Although the area has been improved up to maybe possibly up to between 19 and 21 spaces, I believe, having listened to the concerns of the residents, that it's going to cause knock-on parking issues up along Marymount and the general area of Ferrybank, and even the operation of traffic around the dual carriageway up onto the next set of lights, where some cars have to either turn down the Abbey Road or indeed do kind of almost a U-turn to get back in towards the city. Just all of that taken together are all to me too much out of line with good planning and the proper development of the area. And all of those reasons I'm going to be voting against. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor David Daniels, and then the final speaker is Councillor Christina Kiley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll be brief, Mayor. With some of the other members, I met some of the residents and business people there recently, Mayor, and it's fair to say, like, they had many concerns on a number of issues, as has been mentioned. It's a tight location, the parking and the traffic arrangements and the parking there. You know, in situations like this, Mayor, when we're going to, this was formerly, as we know, Flynn's pub. Like, there was a pub operating there for over a number of years. I would like to see earlier negotiations, a situation like that with residents, Mayor. We've had it in the past in my own area with Water Street, Road Street, Lower Newton, and that when we were relocating residents, we met them earlier on, Mayor. I think it would help and you'd have everybody on board. But there are issues, Mayor, and I thought the residents, in fairness, and some of the business people there were concerned about their ongoing business there with traffic, because, as Councillor Kelly said, it's tight, it's on a dual carriageway. There are certain issues, Mayor, and as I say, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. And the final one then is Councillor Christina Kiley. Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to address this because it's my first Metropolitan meeting and I will be voting on this. So I just wanted to, I suppose, point out that I have looked into this issue. I have to say I'm in support of the development. I had a lengthy conversation with my predecessor, Susan Gallagher, on this, in which she outlined the objections which she had received from residents and businesses alike. I went over myself to look at the site. I saw the lime tree in question and I saw the signage around it, and I think it was appropriate and welcome that the residents made their concerns heard, so that their concerns could inform changes to the plans. And I welcome the updates which addressed some of the concerns over parking, the preservation of the tree, traffic, balconies, overlooking and stuff like that. But I really think it has to be said here that we're in the middle of an extreme housing crisis. It's a housing crisis that has seen WIT students having to sleep in cars and having to commute really long distances in order to go to college in Waterford. Now, if there are non-Waterford students doing that in Waterford, then there are Waterford students having the same experiences in other cities. Thankfully, my own son, who's in WIT, is living at home, or he could be one of them. So traditional student housing isn't available because it's been used to house families who would normally be housed elsewhere. Housing of any type frees up housing stock across the board. And in terms of this specific development, I mean, we've heard already there's, nearly 900 applicants on the housing list for Ferrybank. A large number of the people who will end up living in these homes are Ferrybank people who want to come home and don't want to be living elsewhere in the country, in the county. So that's just my vision.
Okay, so we need a proposer. Have we a proposer for this?
Propose.
Councillor John Hearn, seconder.
I seconded that, Mayor, already.
Sorry, you previously have a proposer and seconder.
Yeah. Okay. So those in favour, or do you want to do a roll call vote?
Not unless it's necessary, Mayor.
Okay, it's not. Well, those in favour.
Can I just ask for clarification? Does anybody in objection, if they can just state that and I can have that minuted?
Councillor Joe Kelly is voting against, Honor.
And is everybody else in favour?
Yes.
Perfect. That's fine then, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you everybody for agreeing to that. Okay, we'll move on. Taking in charge completion of process road linking Kilbarry Road to and the Lacken Road. Can I ask Fergus to take this, please?
Yes, Mayor, I would have attached a report to the drawing there that went out with the agenda. It's a relatively straightforward one. It's the new road that was built around the back of Kilbarry there to open up service land for further development. And we just need, I suppose, to take the road in charge and declare it to be a public road and add it to the register of public roads for the city.
Okay.
If there's any questions on it, I'd be quite happy to take it, but if otherwise require a resolution to the council just to formalise that.
Can I have a proposer?
Can I propose that, Mayor?
Propose Councillor Joe Conway, second.
I second it.
Councillor John Heron, I'm just calling it as I see them on screen here. Councillor John Heron, everyone in favour?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, correspondence. We have no correspondence. We have one motion, a motion from Councillor Roach. Hold on, I just bring it up here, please.
I formally second that, yeah.
Yeah, proposed by Councillor Roach, seconded by Councillor Daniels. Councillor Roach, you may speak to the motion, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor, I don't really see it being a major issue in the council, but I just think it's important that if we can, that we're extremely proactive in this area. I want to commend the Environment Department because they have already been very proactive in terms of biodiversity in the city, with over 6.5 hectares, left to meadow this year. And I want to thank Owen DeLay and Fergus and everybody else in the department. But I think we need to move on now. And there hasn't really been a process of planting new trees in the urban environment for a long, long time. And I think that it's important that we would do that. We have only 11% forest cover in Ireland, Mayor, and of that only 2% is native trees. So I think it's just very important. People know, they don't need me to tell them the benefit of the trees, how each tree, provides enough carbon oxygen for 10 people, and they take toxins and things like that out of the air. So I really just would ask the council, if I can, Mayor, to undertake a programme of planting of trees in the urban environment. Some parts of the city are very well served, including, I have to say, my own area out here in the Dunmore Road is extremely green, but not every area of the city is as green. And I think it's important that we would do that. Our ancestors did this 100 years ago. We had lots of trees planted in the city, whether that was up Grace Dew or down along the Mall. We have been a little bit remiss, I think, in recent times in the city centre, and I would like to see that addressed. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, was it Councillor Daniels, I think, seconded?
Yeah, I seconded that, Mayor.
Yeah, do you want to speak to it?
Support Councillor Roach's motion, Mayor. I think again, Owen DeLay and the staff, I think, in the environment are doing a great job, Mayor. We've lost a lot of trees in recent weather and storms, Mayor. I would like to see all those implanted again. I think it's vital. But as Councillor Roach said, trees are beautiful and they add so much to areas, Mayor. And I think we should have a new programme coming forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor John Heron, then Councillor Joe Kelly.
And to completely support it, I think we need to show leadership in this. And as I was saying earlier at the meeting, I had meeting community groups, and they were looking to plant community orchards in their own areas. You know, it's ridiculous that we're bringing in fruit from around the world when we could be planting them literally in our own back garden. And it's just like makes so much sense.
Thank you. Councillor Lolo Sullivan.
Sorry, I had to turn off my camera. It's become unstable.
Okay. Yeah.
You might say I'm always unstable. I just think this is a fantastic motion, and I want to commend Councillor Roach for raising it. And I think it's something that we should look at particular locations and look at particular planting schemes and go forward with it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe Conway.
Gormark Vera, I haven't really much to add. I just want to compliment Mary, Councillor Roach on this a super and well considered motion. But I think that we, in tandem with this, is a respect for natural wilding as well. And I just want to compliment all of the staff and people in Owen DeLay's department and indeed the environment in general for the lovely way that the inclusion park in Tramore is wilding itself. It's getting from what was the municipal dump at one stage is now a lovely walking area, and it's talked about more and more by the people of Tramore and well appreciated. So
Thanks very much, Councillor Conway. Sorry, Councillor Christina Kiley.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I too would like to compliment Councillor Roach on this and wholeheartedly support it. And apologies if this is the wrong approach, but I'd like to propose a small amendment to the motion that that we add in an extensive programme of predominantly native tree planting and tree maintenance in Waterford City. Councillor Roach herself just mentioned the native planting, and again I'd also like to compliment the team behind the natural biodiversity planting, or the wildflowers, the rewilding that was allowed to do over the season. I mean, it was stunning, and it was really beautiful on the roundabouts as well. And I suppose if the motion is passed, which I imagine it will be, it would be great if there was a very carefully planned programme of tree planting, the right tree in the right place for the right reason. I think some of the other councillors have raised earlier issues around trees in the wrong places and maybe issues over them having to be removed. So apologies if this isn't the right forum for suggesting the amendment.
Councillor Roach, are you okay to take the amendment?
Yes, no problem, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Sorry, Mayor, just need a seconder for that amendment.
Sorry, seconder for the amendment?
Lola.
Councillor Lola O'Sullivan. Okay. Councillor Joanne Bailey, Councillor Joe Kelly, and then finally Councillor Jody Power.
Councillor Kiley just said it really, right tree, right place, right, so yeah, that's what I was going to come in to just say, is it has to be in the right area. I put in a bid for a tree to be removed out of a housing estate because it was doing damage, but I spoke before, and any tree that's been removed is being replanted, so I'm happy to put in that representation, but just the right tree for the right area.
Okay. Councillor Joe Kelly.
Thanks, Avira. I agree with the motion, very good motion, and the planting of trees. I think trees are brilliant. We need them for our biodiversity, no question about that. But I was going to hit on the thing about the right tree in the right place. I live in Hillview, and we have like hundreds and hundreds of trees, and it's a wonderful place. But there are a huge amount of them that are damaging footpaths. Footpaths are being lifted, walls are being cracked, endless damage being done up here, and the tree department and OWN are doing the best they can, and in other parts of the city as well. So I think it's vital that while we are all in favour of trees, they have to be the correct species. For years, not saying council did it, but for years perhaps private developers, they planted maybe whatever trees were handy at the time, or maybe they got them cheaper. I don't know where they came from. But they were never, they don't look down the road 20 or 25 years or 30 years on, and we have all of the damage then to clear up, and it falls to the hands of the council. So although I'm 100% behind trees and greening of anywhere that we can, we absolutely have to be certain that they won't cause trouble 20, 25 years down the road. But I will be supporting the motion.
Okay, and the last speaker on this, and we're coming up to the time now, is Councillor Jody Power.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Like the rest, most of the other councillors, I really support this. I think it's a wonderful resolution to have. Okay, and I'd be certainly voting for it. But I would ask the question. Okay, a lot of times in this city of ours, the trees are there long before development comes, and when development seems to supersede any time that the trees are, so it's the trees are just moved out of the way. So could we have a more concentrated effort that the trees are preserved, okay, and the development is going to be to incorporate the trees as it goes on? And I'd like to ask the question as well, do we have a preservation order on all the trees in the public realm in Waterford? Are they registered? Thank you.
I'm afraid I can't answer that. Fergus.
Mary, I can answer that one. I mean, there would be tree preservation orders on certain trees in certain places, both in public and private domains. But certainly not every tree, or not by any long stretch of the imagination, is every tree in a public open space on the subject of a tree preservation order. And that's something that will be dealt with, I suppose, in terms of the draft development plan. I think the schedule of TPOs is attached to the development plan, as far as I know.
Okay.
But you could take it as a given, Mayor, just in relation to the amendment, that wherever we are planting new trees, that they are native species that we use almost exclusively. We would generally avoid at all. we absolutely generally avoid putting in non-native species when we are planting.
Okay. So I presume we're all in favour of the amended motion?
Green, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks,
Great.
everyone. Now, as our meeting started about 10 minutes late, so Councillor Pat Fitzgerald wants to raise an issue under AOB. Even though we're on the time, I'm going to allow into 5. So, Councillor Fitzgerald, Pat.
Thank you, Mayor. It wasn't my intention to raise this today, but I received an email again this evening relating to a site in the Cheek Point area, and I believe there's heavy machinery working down there now again. But there's been 2 houses seriously damaged there due to due to the ground being undermined underneath them by another development is what they believe, and it kind of looks pretty obvious that may well be the cause. But like some of the DOEs are the Director of Services are well aware of what I'm speaking about here, as is indeed with the CEO. But look, it wasn't my intention to raise this, but the family have asked me to raise this now again today because there's two heavy machines again working in this area, and like it's quite obvious that there's one house that has been very, very seriously damaged due to subsidence. And I just wonder, look, are there anything that the council can do to kind of contact this family or give them some advice, because like this issue was not of their making, and like they now face probably the ruination of their properties. So look, I believe this has to be dealt with by the council, and I believe that they can't kind of really hide behind anybody. They can't bury their head in the sand here. They have to kind of go and at least speak to these people. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone from the council want to, from the executive, or maybe if you Fergus, if we could talk to Councillor Fitzgerald and maybe go. No.
We've already had correspondence on this. I know the Chief Executive would have given a direct response to Councillor Fitzgerald there a week or so back, I think. I'm not too sure if any of my colleagues from planning would want to comment on it, but we don't see it as being, I suppose, an issue for ourselves from the roads or transportation side of the house. It's primarily a matter between a private developer and private homeowners, as we understand it at this stage. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Christina Kiley, I see your hand is still raised. Do you want to come back in under any other business?
No, my hand isn't intentionally raised, so apologies if it's still there.
That's okay. Listen, folks, that's the end of our meeting, and I want to thank everybody for being so. Sorry, Liam.
Yes, sorry, Mayor, just in relation to that last matter, I can confirm that the planning department does have an open enforcement file in relation to that matter. So we are aware of it and we're investigating it.
Okay, is that okay, Councillor Fitzgerald? Okay, right. I want to thank everybody for the meeting and for your cooperation. I think we got through the business of the meeting today on time, which is always good. And so we'll see you at our next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Mayor.